Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council regular meeting of June the 11th, 2024. Meeting has been called to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarez? Here. Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Here.
Vice Mayor Salazar?
Here.
Mayor Rico Medina?
Here. For those that are able, if you please rise with me as we do the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll move on to item number 4, public comments for items not on the agenda. There are some items on the agenda, so if they're later in the meeting, then that would be the opportunity. This is for items that are not on the agenda. And we'll have the city clerk call everyone one by one, and if there's a couple at a time, if we have a lot, if you could line up. And again, there is not yielding of time. If you, when your name is called, if you wish not to speak, you don't certainly need to, and we'll be here to listen to you. So what we would ask, again, is for everyone to have the respect to each other as they come up and they speak, and give them their opportunity to be heard, with no jeering, booing, clapping. Let's give everybody their opportunity to speak and be heard. And so once you come to the podium, the time will start. There is a timer on the screen that will help you to keep track, if that hopefully helps. So with that, City Clerk.
First set of speakers, Rami A., followed by Hiba H., followed by Netta J., and finally Justin.
Good evening, City Council. These last few months, I, along with the Palestinian community and allies of peace, have been watching children suffer at the hands of violent states that disregard the humanity and sanctity of childhood. Now, this council chose as a collective to ignore it as it happens to us. And that, while disappointing, dehumanizing, and incensing, doesn't surprise me. What I must say is surprising, though, is that those same systems of policing and suppression have now come to roost in San Bruno. The fact that a training with harmful chemicals can be anywhere near a school is reprehensible. No child should experience what these children did. Not in Gaza and not here. We have exposed these kids to illness, violence, and trauma for what is an absolutely unwarranted training. We must pass an ordinance to prevent such trainings here in San Bruno. The second thing I'd like to address is the matter of the San Bruno resident who was assaulted in a racially motivated attack weeks ago. This community member was standing idly by, minding his own business, when another person who saw that he was of Palestinian descent pulled over to the side, walked over to him, attacked him, and then pushed him onto oncoming traffic. A police report was made, no arrests were made, and nothing of substance has been given back to the victim. It's injustice like this that expose the flaws in our justice system and also expose the racism present within it. We demand as a community that this assault be addressed and that justice is served. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speakers, Hiba H., Netta J., and Justin. Yep. Okay. Oh. Okay, I'll call the next. Camila, followed by Jamal Katoot, followed by Ray Moser, followed by Eleni.
Good evening, Council, City Manager, and staff. This evening, I come to you with a heavy heart, as children in District 1 have been neglected by our city. On Tuesday, May 21st, tear gas wafted onto my son's elementary school from the nearby San Francisco jail and sickened many students and staff members. Symptoms have ranged from short-term burning in the eyes, nose, and throat to more extreme cases like vomiting for 3 to 4 days on end since the exposure, as well as skin rashes and sustained fatigue. This is all very traumatizing for any child to experience. I'm here tonight because I am outraged by the city's silence. Children in our city were exposed to tear gas. Where is our collective anger? Why aren't we all moving mountains to make sure that this never happens again? My son has asked me several times if he is going to get gassed, like the kids at his school. One thing I've learned from civic engagement is that folks are always quick to communicate the parameters of their purview. When the San Bruno community came to you and asked to pass a peace resolution condemning the murder of 18,000 children in Gaza, some of you were quick to say this wasn't in your purview as a council member, and that you had no business weighing in on foreign affairs. Children in your city were exposed to tear gas, a chemical weapon, and everyone is just sad that it happened. Why hasn't the city officially condemned this incident? Is the safety of the children in San Bruno not important? Councilwoman Alvarez, Portola Elementary and Portola Highlands neighborhood are in your district. You were elected to serve the constituency of District 1. Why weren't you at the town hall with the sheriff? Why haven't you taken the time to connect with families who are impacted by the tear gas? What steps have you taken to advocate for your district? Is the safety of children in your district not in your purview? I am so disappointed that you have turned a blind eye to the trauma and suffering that the children in our community have experienced. Some children are still sick. They have rashes, chemical burns on their skin. They are fatigued, they are tired, they haven't gotten over it. Tonight, I am pleading with the city to put children first. Children in San Bruno. Pass an ordinance banning drills of this nature within San Bruno city limits. No more trainings in San Bruno. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, City Council. I'm here to echo the words of the last speaker. It's absolutely unacceptable that the tear gas had reached and affected any kids at all, let alone kids in San Bruno. It's absolutely ridiculous that at a time of increased civic unrest and protest that our city is allowing the SF sheriffs or any police training of riot control to happen at all. Too often at protests or at peaceful demonstrations, the first to be violent are not protesters, it is law enforcement. I highly encourage the city to ensure that police trainings such as the ones that happened in May never happen again in the city. And I also request that the city work with the San Francisco supervisors to make sure that something is done. In our county, we have sheriff's oversight, but we have no inspector general. Even in our county, we don't really have the ability to regulate the people who enforce our laws and overlook us, despite the fact that we pay them our tax dollars, and despite the fact that they have weapons, armor, and every right to shoot and kill and to enforce the law, despite the fact that we have no ability to really regulate them. If we allow such a thing to happen, how are we to expect that law enforcement will truly keep us safe when we need their help? If they're training to disperse crowds who are peacefully protesting or dispersing tear gas near children, near elementaries, and in our cities. I urge the city to pass an ordinance that prevents police training in our city and also to work with the San Francisco supervisors to make sure the San Francisco sheriffs are held responsible and accountable for the things that they did. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, City Council. I'm also here to echo the call for you guys to do something about the kids who were affected by the tear gas at the school. Also, I'm here for another reason. As you all know, on March 12, 2024, a group of San Bruno constituents came to speak at a City Council meeting. As it was the second night of Ramadan, a community member had requested from the city, as a form of courtesy, the use of a table that is already in the lobby for some food, and noted that some members of the community would be using the lobby area for prayer. The city rejected our request and instead set up a canopy and a table outside in the cold and darkness, surrounded by cones and cops. The community obviously rejected this disrespectful quote-unquote accommodation. Then we were met by San Bruno Police Chief Ryan Johansson berating us to go outside and eat and pray, and that we are not allowed to use the lobby space to eat and pray. At least 4 of you were present and witnessed this, and of course none of you guys did anything about it. On March 20th, the CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, sent a letter to the city demanding accountability of the city's Islamophobic actions. Disgracefully, the next day, the city posted an insincere quote-unquote apology on the website, exposing the name of a community member who requested the accommodation. This led to a meeting with Rico and City Mayor Alex, where they recognized their faults and assured the community they would work to ensure the right steps were taken to take accountability and apologize for the Islamophobic incident on March 12th. Part of the accountability and apology was to remove the old statement from the website, which was done, and replace it with a new statement. The city even agreed to work with the CARE representative on drafting that new statement, and he gave that information out to both of you at that meeting. Till today, the city has not posted anything on the website updating the statement they had originally made. This council continues to lack basic leadership skills. If the city wanted to perform a genuine apology to the Muslim constituents of this city, they would have posted and updated the statement as promised in the meeting. Additionally, I've emailed Alex over and over again, and he literally ignores our emails. The last email I sent to him was on May 14th. I still have no response. And Rico, you're also on those emails, so you know that we're emailing and no response. For a city manager who's been here for about a year now, there should be an annual performance evaluation on the city manager. For someone who makes $320,000 a year, you can answer an email. I don't understand. And there was many of us who were in that meeting that heard and know that an updated statement should be made on the website and has been rejected. We gave the city an opportunity to correct its disrespect and Islamophobia offline. That opportunity was not taken, and further showed that the city does harbor Islamophobic tropes. This is not excusable. Do as you promised and update the statement on the website.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Council. What has the Council done to ensure no other school children will be affected by the chemical weapons training at the San Bruno Jail? It is illegal to let off tear gas in California unless used in self-defense. The statute makes no mention about training exercises for out-of-town agencies. Let them do it in their own city limits if they think it's so safe. The council has the right to pass an ordinance outlawing the use of chemical weapons training inside our city limits. San Francisco may own and operate the San Bruno Jail and grounds at 1 Moreland Drive, but it's still within the San Bruno city limits. I don't want to hear about this not being in your purview. This is about the San Bruno school children and San Bruno residents. You passed an ordinance regulating the sale of marijuana near schools and daycares. Now pass an ordinance outlawing chemical weapons training near our schools and homes. Shame on you for not doing this the minute you found out that children were affected. Do your job and protect the children and citizens of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'd like to talk about the work that was done on the streets up in College Drive. I went to the city council or to the safety traffic committee meetings, and on 2 of them, and everything seemed to be going relatively well. According to staff, Harry, the city doesn't want to put up stop signs up there because they're more concerned that the city will get sued if someone gets hit as opposed to a pedestrian getting hit, which I thought was asinine. When I saw what the city had done, painting lines in the turn-only lanes, I wrote a letter to Harry telling him he effed up big time, and I didn't say F, I used the actual word. A few days later, the city, I guess, scraped down the street, got rid of the turn-only lane, and changed it back to the way it was. You rely a lot on your city engineer for how the street should be laid out. And it's not really a good thing for the people that live up there. I think you need to put in one more crosswalk, and you need to put in stop signs. I'm not worried about whether you get sued or not, because you have insurance for such things. You can't make a decision because you're worried about getting sued on what you should do. Do the right thing for the people that live up there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hello, Council. Effective leaders possess qualities such as integrity, self-awareness, empathy, courage, accountability, and respect. San Bruno deserves leaders who take initiative and prioritize the needs of the community, fully understanding that it is their responsibility to do so. When Councilmember Alvarez was asked what she has done to support the families in her district who were impacted by decades-old chemical weapons, her response was disappointing but not surprising. She stated, quote, "This incident is outside my jurisdictional ability to make decisions on applicable next steps. I am limited on what I can do," end quote. This attitude of shirking responsibility and citing jurisdictional limitations is unbecoming of a leader. It shows a lack of courage required to advocate for your community, a lack of empathy required to make informed decisions for others, a lack of self-awareness of the influence you wield as a council member, and a lack of accountability as she was unable to simply admit that she's done nothing to support the families in her district. Alvarez also lied in her email, stating, quote, "I reached out to Principal Croats to ask the conditions of the children, staff, and parents," end quote. Sheila Croats has not been the principal of Portola since December. If your statement is accurate, and if you wish to demonstrate some integrity, I believe you owe the parents of Portola Elementary the proof. Alvarez just asked for a raise after this council had discussed at length the looming financial deficit of the city. She seems content with doing the bare minimum while on this council, hardly offering any insight or asking questions during meetings. It would be perfectly normal for her to make it through an entire meeting only uttering the words, "I agree." These actions demonstrate a lack of respect for the community and the position she holds. It shows she lacks self-awareness required to understand how inappropriate it is for her, of all people, to request additional compensation at this time. Councilmember Alvarez, please consider stepping down to allow for a true leader to take your position. We can't afford another 2 years of you sleeping at the dais. Furthermore, I hope you all take steps towards passing an ordinance to prevent chemical weapons trainings from taking place in San Bruno. You were able to do so to protect children from cannabis, from having cannabis in our city, saying, you know, it's going to protect the children. Children have been physically harmed. What are you going to do to actually protect children? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speaker cards?
Yes, next speakers are Chris,
Mr. Booth.
Cynthia, and Hiba H.
And we have a gentleman in the back, too.
Okay.
Next speaker, please. Oh, there you are.
I came here tonight to talk about a lot of the things that's not happening throughout the San Bruno city, and weeds, striping that hasn't been taken care of over 3 years. But I'm going to put that aside right now, because after hearing what they're talking about, I think it's more important to have empathy, caring, a phone call, engagement, and a sit down to cut through the chase, figure out what's going on, let people know what's happening, and talk to the people, the mothers, the fathers of the kids. Not just every kid is normal. Some have lung problems, some have allergies, some have diseases you don't even know about. But if you allow yourself to open up and cut through the tape and allow yourself to put the shoulders down, they're good people here. I know these guys. I didn't know what was going on until tonight. And I could be honest with you, if you make a phone call, engage, have a little meeting during the week, and I guarantee it will calm this thing down and you can move forward, and just have a little bit of this goes a long way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker. Thank you.
Hello. I am a parent of 2 children at Portola Elementary, and I am here to comment on the tear gas incident at the San Bruno Jail. So I have several concerns. Mainly, there was very little widespread communication disseminated to the Portola Elementary community, as well as the surrounding neighborhood after the incident took place. A lot of parents and children experienced symptoms of exposure to tear gas, as you heard from earlier speakers, and very little information was provided to the school community from the start. An open house at the school scheduled on the same day that the incident occurred was not rescheduled or canceled, despite some children having experienced severe symptoms. So they didn't take it seriously, admittedly, the school district. 1 week later, the school district and the sheriff held a meeting at Portola to discuss the incident. There, several promises were made. Number one, the district would send out a survey to parents to create a record of how many children were experiencing symptoms of exposure, and this was done, so I do want to give them credit for that. Number two, the district would work with the sheriff to fully develop the list of symptoms of exposure to tear gas and disseminate that widely, and that was not done. Parents did not get the full list. Number three, the district would share with parents post-exposure actions one should take. So for instance, disposing of clothing and showering. This information was never provided to all. The sheriff's office did provide it to the district. They did not distribute it. Number four, the district superintendent, Matthew Duffy, said he would share the sheriff's contact information to parents, and this was never done. Number five, the district will work with the local implementing agencies and distribute information as it becomes available and hold a town hall meeting. And we have yet to receive an update on this. It's been crickets. I'm hoping that this will be done, but there's no communication as to what's happening. So it would be nice to have an update on that. Is it happening? What's going on? The sheriff provided a fact sheet on CS, the active compound in tear gas, but CS only makes up 10% of what tear gas consists of. I would like to know what other chemicals were dispersed so that I know what else the children may have been exposed to. Were there heavy metals, for instance, as part of this mixture? I'm looking forward to receiving this information. I hope the City Council will step in and help the district and possibly the Sheriff's Office with better communication. Obviously, training is needed here. It's not just emergency training, emergency situation training, but also communication, clear communication with the school community, and following through on promises that were made. You know, that's a problem. The lack of follow through just makes me think no one really cares and just wants this problem to go away. So we really need strong leaders that don't cower in these situations and that truly care, gather and share as much information as possible, and do what they can to properly inform the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here at a City Council public meeting about the service charges of the sewer. And in this statement, you say that starting July 1st, 24.
Excuse me, I apologize. That is on the agenda for this evening, and we will be
That's what it says. Is the public, it says here, it says hearing. We consider it's the meeting here at this time, and starting at 7 p.m. will be held. Public hearing is considering approval of the report.
Yeah, we haven't got to that item yet on the agenda.
I'm very sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right. Thank you for being here. And we have your card, so you'll be called up. We know you want to speak, and so we'll go ahead and call you up when that topic. You're very welcome.
I'm Hiba. I was called. I'm here now. Hello. Okay, I'm just gonna hold this. Sorry. I'm here about the tear gassing and pepper spraying of the children at the local elementary school. I'm really outraged. Sorry, I'm out of breath. Also, I sprinted from my car. I'm so out of shape. I'm sorry, but I'm outraged. Didn't you guys just fund the police with more money like a few months ago? I remember sitting through a meeting and you guys literally funded them more money to tear gas and pepper spray children with tear gas that's expired. Where is your outrage? Have you been pressuring the sheriff's department to investigate this? Have you said anything? Did you console the parents or the children? Have you checked in on them? If I wasn't so out of breath, I would go off right now. I'm so tired, but please pressure the sheriff's department. And on top of that, I don't know, I'm just really upset. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments for items not on the agenda for this evening?
I have no other speaker cards.
You sure? Okay. Okay, thank you for your comments. There were several speakers that wanted, so I wanted to, on the tear gas, just so we know. So there was an incident that did happen. It did affect students. It affected adults, specifically up at Portola Elementary. Our fire department responded. I spoke to the sheriff 2 or 3 times the next day to ask the status of what was happening. There was a town hall or a meeting called by Superintendent Duffy and the San Francisco sheriff. That is San Francisco property in their county. We surround it. And they had to go over with the parents that were there. Some of the promises that you heard from there, I was only able to attend a portion of the meeting because we had a council meeting on that day. A joint letter went out from Superintendent Gusti and myself, as the mayor, and to the sheriff, and it was for an immediate end to all non-custodial gas-based training exercises at the jail facility. The implementation of protocol where all district and city agencies are notified of any highly sensitive trainings and or unusual events taking place at the facility, and a timely sharing of information with the district and the city when the findings from the investigation about the May 22nd incident are complete. And we told that we were looking forward for this to be done in a timely fashion. So a joint letter by the president of the board and myself did already go to the sheriff's department. Councilmember Alvarez, Trustee Blanco, President Giusti of the board, and myself are having a meeting Thursday at 6 p.m. to discuss, since they are in those districts. When we talked about, this was the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, not the San Bruno's. What was allocated when we had the annual statement, what is required by the state, and they call it military, but in this case it was a drone to be purchased. It was a drone. So this is something that even though school is out, keep in mind we have Skyline College, we have Church of the Highlands, but we have neighbors that go out for walks, that exercise, that walk their dogs, that live even closer. Sure, it gets windy up there, but it had an effect that we still probably truly don't know the amount of folks that it affected, because they could be like, well, maybe I had a bad allergy day. Maybe I had this because I just did not know. So as far as us being able to dictate to the school district whatever they committed, doesn't mean I can't speak to Ms. Blanco on Thursday. We're doing a check-in on this. They are investigating it. It was committed that there will be none of that training, and it was halted immediately, and it is not being brought back until the investigation is complete. And at that point, which they have admitted fault, they're not trying to skate it, they admitted their fault. And so now it's how do we work to go forward? Some that have lived in this community a long time remember that there was a shooting range there that the residents could not stand, but it's their property. And it took a council back then and community working together so that they removed it and moved it permanently because the neighbors didn't want to keep hearing gunfire all the time. So I just wanted to bring, since there were several comments on that, what is done. And other agencies are also for air quality and other have been contacted. and are also looking into their elements of what they do. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point, and I still want to, and I want to thank everybody for their comments and their time. Next, we'll move on to item number 5, announcements and presentations. Public comment, is it on something that's not on the agenda?
Yes, not on the agenda. I just came in, I'm not prepared, but something concerned about the park.
Sure. Please. You've been patient and waiting? Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm not prepared, but I try my best.
That's okay.
You know, I live around the San Bruno Park where you're doing all the remodeling, or I know the building looks beautiful. I don't know what's the final outcome. Last year parade, I think the Posey parade, I just was looking at the road around there. And I was very concerned that they eliminated the parking, which is adjacent to the park. And we had a conversation with, Marty was there, I remember, and there was one lady, and she's saying, well, you know, people should watch their kids and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the bottom line, it is very dangerous right now. I tell you why. Every time I pass by, kids are going down where the rocks are, even with their parents. They playing in the creek, jumping back and forth. I don't want to take a video because, you know, it's their privacy. Additionally, the last few days, the trucks are parked in the middle because they have to carry the barbecue table right there. All the are stuck there because there's no parking. So, plus the place is very, very narrow. Believe me, every time I go out of the house and coming back, I have to take that road. If you're not paying attention 100%, somebody will, boom, crash you because it's too narrow right now. And I think you're making a parking on the right side. I don't know if that's intended for people to park and carry and cross the street while you have that curve. I think the system in the past was much better to have a parking on the left, make the creek underneath. That's my opinion again. And I don't know, one lady told me at that time, well, you know, it's PG&E money, who care? What does that mean, PG&E money and who care? What, you spend the money just left and right because it's PG&E money? So this is my concern, and believe me, you're gonna hear an accident there. I don't know if it's already there. Somebody gonna be overrun by a car, kid gonna fall and hit his head against those big rocks like you are on Yosemite or Lake Tahoe, you know. I don't know. This is very, very, very dangerous, in my opinion. And thank you for considering this.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. Now we'll go back to the agenda. Item A, we have 2 proclamations this evening, and then we're going to receive a update. I'll try to move this along. First, there's a proclamation in recognition of Juneteenth as National Freedom Day. And for those that had heard or around over at the San Bruno City Park from noon to 3 last Saturday, there was an event that was held out there. I think this was maybe the 3rd year. And basically, we want to thank, I think the council will want to thank Rhonda Collins and the Community Services Department for their assistance and help in doing that once again. And so, whereas, as we may know, that back on June 19th, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger led troops into Galveston, Texas, to announce the end of the Civil War and the insidious institution of slavery. And whereas, as we know, it was issued by President Abraham Lincoln and had illegal freed slaves in Texas on January 1st, 1863, almost 2.5 years earlier than after the general order. Some slave masters withheld the information from the slaves, holding them as slaves through one more harvest season. And whereas, as word spread about Granger's announcement, celebrations broke out across the states. Juneteenth, short for June 19th, commemorates this day, which marked the effective end of slavery in the United States. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Rico E. Medina, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, urge all residents to honor and reflect on the significant role that Black Americans have played in the history of the United States and how they have enriched society through their steadfast commitment to promoting unity and equality. And this will be given to Rhonda when she gets back. She was not able to be here. The next item B, is a proclamation recognizing June 16th through the 22nd as National Mosquito Control Awareness Week. I'll read a couple. Whereas the American Mosquito Control Association has declared the week of 16th through the 22nd of June 2024 as National Mosquito Control Awareness Week, and whereas National Mosquito Control Awareness Week will increase the public's awareness of the threat of disease, will encourage the public to take action in preventing mosquito-transmitted diseases, and will highlight the activities of the various mosquito and vector research and control agencies working to minimize the health threat within California. Now, therefore, I, Rico E. Medina, be it resolved, the Mayor of the City of San Bruno do hereby proclaim June 16th through the 22nd, 2024 as Mosquito Control Awareness Week, and we do have a representative from that agency who is here. Rachel, if you'd meet me at the podium.
Thank you for having me tonight. I'd just like to say that we'll be having an open house at our facility in Burlingame this Saturday. So if you'd like to come and see what all your tax dollars pay for and all the services we offer to everyone who lives in San Bruno and the rest of San Mateo County, you are more than welcome to come. Our address is 1351 Rollins Road. It will be this coming Saturday from noon to 4 p.m. And we're there to answer all your questions, as we are at all times, if you want to visit our website or give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think if you haven't been to their facility, it is impressive, and things that I had not known until I've gone there, and so it's well worth it if you're on Rollins. Thank you for being here. Next, we're going to receive an update from Ecology of San Bruno on the recent spring drop-off event, which was held on April the 27th, which was a Saturday, our normal routine of this year.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time just to give you an update on how things went at our community drop-off. That happened April 27th. We had a lot. We had the mayor and several council members there to volunteer. We also had a lot of volunteers from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They had several. We did have some overnight dumping. People do sneak in there and get a few of their items in the bins. We collected about 62,000 pounds of garbage. We also have 2 rows that we've perfected over time to get the people in and out as quickly as possible. As a comparison, you can see the trend. People always ask me, is this the largest amount of cars we've had? And you can see that it wasn't the peak, but we definitely had a strong number. And you can see how the garbage kind of peaks and valleys throughout each one. So it's really not dependent anymore if it's spring or fall. It's just if people have the time to clean their garages. Paint's going down. We've only collected 3,000 pounds, though, of paint, over 12,000 pounds of e-waste. This was our biggest year of appliances and mattresses. We had 2 flatbeds that we had to completely fill up. As you can see, we had 45 appliances and 20 mattresses. So there was a lot to be had that day. We partner with e-recycling and Clean Harbors, and they are the ones who actually do the collecting of the paint and the e-waste. A small copy of our insert, some enhancements that we're going to do for the fall. We learn something new every time. We're going to remind the public that there really is no construction and demolition material. That kind of is not part of the program. We're going to maybe include some sample pictures of things that we accept, and then we'll have a little line on there to say that if they're not sure if we accept something, to please call our office. But we've been pretty lenient over time. This is a huge partnership that this only works with the partnership of the church and the city of San Bruno. The city provides the barricades, the cones, and a CSO staff to keep things flowing on Sneath. And the church generously gives us the property to have this event. So huge partnership. And while I'm at the podium, I want to do a couple more updates. We did also do our compost giveaway on the same day. We do that twice a year. We'll have it again in October. This was the first year that we actually got rid of all the compost. It was all given away to the residents. And we've also continued with our abandoned waste program. We've been doing that for several years. People respond on the app, and I don't have the number in front of me, but we do over 500. I think of this every year. So it's I hope the residents are seeing the effects of us picking up the stuff that people leave on corners. Our drivers are sweeping our community on a daily basis. And all residents should be seeing our annual brochure. It dropped in the mail today, so everyone will see that. It's got the enhancement of our abandoned waste program. That's starting July 1, so that just went in the mail, dropped in the mail today. That is it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Okay. All right, so those are the items that we have on for that. Oh, and once again, that will be occurring same place, same time, not the same day, of course. I mean, on a Saturday, yes, but it'll be in October? Okay. All right, is there any speakers for announcements, presentations?
I do not have any speaker cards.
Okay, let's move on to item 6, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented in an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. There will be a single public comment period for all items in this section unless a council member requests an item be pulled for a separate vote, and that is items 6A through 6I. Are there any ones for a separate vote? Anyone that want question, comment, or add? Mr. Hamilton.
I'd like to pull item I for comment.
I thank you. Any others?
Item H.
H. Okay, we're going to take H first. Consider adoption of a resolution accepting the Avenues 3-1 sewer and water main replacement project as complete. Councilman Hunter.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we share the success of the work that Public Works is doing to replace our water and sewer mains. So that's the reason why I'm pulling this, Mr. Mayor. In this last year, or what we have before us tonight is to approve the final payment for the completion of the latest construction project, and this is the replacement of the water, replacement of the sewer, and all the streets, and installing brand new curb ramps of the streets from El Camino to San Mateo Avenue, from Keynes to Sylvan. So this segment, this neighborhood, the cost for that was $11 million. And this is where and why we have to continually to reinvest into our water and sewer systems. This is the third project that has been completed on the east side of El Camino. And it's my understanding that our next project will be in the avenues, starting from the very southern end up into, I believe that will be at Pine. And it takes a couple years of the water revenue and the sewer revenue to build up the amount of money in order to get these projects done. And it takes basically that amount of time as well to design and to construct. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that work and thank our Public Works Department for overseeing the construction of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing that, another at this time, we'll go to I. Consider adoption of a resolution accepting and appropriating the MTC, or better known as Metropolitan Transportation Commission Transportation's Development Act Article 3, fiscal year 23-24. Councilmember Hamilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this. This is an important project. We had a pretty large effort last year to finalize our Safe Routes to School program, and this action that's happening tonight is required action in order for us to qualify for a grant from the MTC, and so it is just kind of an administrative thing. But I still wanted to highlight it because of the important work that this is going to fund if we're successful in securing the grant, which is these are all high priority recommendations around 10 schools in San Bruno, both public and private schools, and it's all about getting our kids to school safely. So there's red curb. I won't go through the entire list because it's a long list, but there's new red curbs, new signage, high visibility crosswalks, curb ramps, bollards, curb extensions, raised crosswalks, all kinds of things. This goes on and on and on. And these are all the highest priority things that we've identified as items that need to be addressed around our schools. So I just wanted to highlight that this item, and I'll be voting yes. I hope everyone else is as well.
Any other questions, comments? Are there any public comments on consent?
I have no speaker cards.
Okay, any action by colleagues? Items 6A through 6I.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion Salazar, second Hamilton to approve consent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to item number 7, conduct of business.
Item A, receive the city manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2024 to 25 and provide direction for preparation of the city council adopted budget, which is scheduled for final approval on June 25th, 2024.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Sorry, we're going to do some, I'm going to be looking at a bunch of screens all at the same time, so I apologize if I'm looking distracted. I'm actually not. I am very pleased to present to you my recommended city budget for the coming fiscal year 24-25. Thank you. The agenda for tonight really is, I want to remind the council about setting the table of sort of the conditions under which we are building this budget. I'm going to present to you, or actually the CFO will present to you the actual budget overview, and then we'll provide some information on next steps. Budget setting the table. This is really, like I said, trying to set the context under which this budget was created and some of the procedures and protocols that were put into place to help guide me and the staff in creating the budget. The objective tonight is to receive the presentation and then provide direction for preparation of the City Council adopted budget for fiscal year 25, and that public hearing will be scheduled on June 25th. Thank you. So I've done many budgets in my career, and there's always what I'll call the bottom line. And basically, if you hear nothing else, hear this. The budget is balanced, and it maintains and expands existing municipal services. It is a $288.8 million all funds operating and capital budget, and you have, within that budget, you are funding 280 employees. If you take nothing else from tonight, you can walk away and say, okay, I got the information. But we have a lot more information to share with you because we think it's important that you and the public really have an understanding of what this $288 million buys us in services. The budget building blocks, again, this doesn't come easy. This is one of those processes that's very detailed. We have been bringing the council and the public along since January in this process. The council, as you will recall, adopted budget principles in January. That was something new for you to help set some guardrails for me on how far I can go and what are some of the principles I really should be following in building the budget for the council consideration. Council held a goal setting session in February that set your top priority initiatives. It's very important that we funded those initiatives as well. Basically, we are looking at cost-effective increases for police, fire, planning, building, and public works services, and making sure we are providing the funding for those efforts. There are long-range investments in streets, parks, water, sewer, and technology, getting back a little bit to what the mayor was saying earlier. And finally, there's one-time money for one-time expenditures. The idea when you do need one-time money to pull one-time money reserves, that you are doing so in a manner that is providing for a one-time service or infrastructure. So to remind the council of what your top priorities were, one of the items you had is to assess the fiscal feasibility of the transit corridor plan. This is a plan that the council adopted in 2013. I think now 10 plus years later, the council's asking how effective was that plan? Did we miss anything? Should we be looking at updating that plan? So there is monies set aside so that we can start that process of reevaluating that plan. As I have mentioned to the council many times before, we need to understand how we as an organization fit in the broader market for hiring staff. And item number 2 is to conduct a comprehensive employee classification and compensation study. Number 3 is to finalize the downtown park improvement plans, and that includes Centennial Plaza, Florida Park, and Posey Parade, and sufficient funds have been set aside to continue those investments. Number 4 is to initiate downtown beautification efforts, and this really has to do with, the greening of the downtown, reinstalling landscaping into many of the pots, getting some consistent banners that are modern and reflect various seasonal sort of activities, and then looking at some marquee signs as well. And finally, and importantly, stabilizing CityNet's fiscal sustainability. Those are the 5 initiatives by the council. All 5 of these have been funded in the proposed budget to you tonight. We've talked about budget headwinds, and these are basically the economic conditions under which council should be advised and understand what are the things that you need to consider as you're looking at adopting a budget in 2 weeks. And for fiscal year 25, some of the positive, the things that we're working in our favor, is our investment earnings. Right about 2020, 2021, investment earnings for the cities were very down at less than 1% returns. And nowadays we're looking at pushing 5% returns on our investments. And that's a very, very positive indicator for the city. The cannabis tax, you heard about that earlier tonight, not the tax per se, but the fact that we are now a city that has permitted one cannabis retail outlet here in our community, and the promises of what kind of tax returns that will bring to the community. That is funded in the budget this year to the tune of about $700,000. And really always looking at trying to be more efficient and effective with our organizational setup, where there's 2 issues here that I think are important for the council to understand. We're asking the council to approve the creation of an administrative services department, which is really the consolidation of 3 departments that we presently have: human resources, information technology, and finance, putting them under one leadership rather than 3. And the final thing is, going back to the council's initiative, is addressing CityNet. CityNet, as of July 1st, will move into the city manager's office for continued management as we look at some disposition of CityNet in the near future, which we will get to at a future council meeting. Some of the concerns we have for the economic headwinds: vehicle license fee, property taxes. This is a very, very complicated state formula for allocating property taxes. In our city, we are facing the loss of that revenue, or the drawdown of that revenue over time. This year, it's about a $1.7 million hit to our general fund budget, and that is very significant. That's a loss of a lot of potential money to pay for, the very important services our community comes to expect. The ARPA wind down, the American Rescue Plan Act, the city received through the COVID, during the COVID pandemic, city received about $10 million to sort of sustain us financially, the way all public agencies receive funds. Those monies are now winding down. We are out of those funds. We have spent them all, so we are now no longer have that as a revenue source. Other concerns, just looking down the road, just general inflation in the general economy, just being aware that things cost more today than they did 5 years ago. And so we are just facing that same pressure every resident and business is facing here in our city. And this council is familiar with, and the public may be familiar with, our Walmart sales tax sharing agreement that is in litigation right now, and our need to sort of embargo certain funds, put them to the side, and make sure we can hold those should that litigation not go favorably for the city. And finally, some unknowns in the current fiscal year. The car dealership, the Cardinale, the Hyundai Genesis car dealership that is planned for the crossing, thank you. I keep forgetting the crossing. That is, we're very, very, very close to the deal being done, and I've said this to the council, you guys are tired of hearing this from me. We are just working with the buyer, the car dealership. We're getting close, but again, it's an unknown for the moment how soon that's going to happen, what the impacts will truly be to our revenue sources. This is the first year we are fully funding a new recreation and aquatic center, and we have not funded one of these in many, many years. And again, as this council knows, and I think as the public knows, the RAC is not meant to be a money maker, but we want to make sure we are managing it to the greatest benefit, to the greatest ability that we can. The RAC this year is about a $4.3 million expenditure, and we're going to get about $2.7 million in revenue, so that gap is always going to be there. We just got to make sure that we are managing that gap very carefully. That is a general fund's contribution to the RAC operation. The state budget deficit. You're all aware that the state continues to struggle with its own budget, and as the state struggles, so too we will feel that impact down the road going. And then finally, labor agreements. One of the things we have done is we are honoring the labor agreements that are in place this year for pay adjustments for staff. But we have one of our major groups expiring in December, and the balance of the groups will expire at the end of next year. So we just have to be aware of what those impacts could mean to us in the future. For the moment, we don't know. Looking at future budget headwinds, and so one of the things I need to do as I'm recommending a budget to you, it has to be something we can also sustain down the road. What you don't want to do is add a bunch of services and then take them away the next year. That just doesn't make any sense. So we're trying to do so in a thoughtful way that we can make sure we are going to be able to continue to support whatever these services might be. And next year, for example, we'll have a full year of the cannabis tax. And as this council knows, that cannabis tax has been promised to be something that's going to be very healthy for the city, but we won't know it until we experience it. So we'll have a full year under our belt next year to know, is it going to really be the $1.4 million that has been promised by the retailer? Will it be more? Will it be less? Time will tell for us. Some of the negatives, some of the concerns is, we've talked about this a lot, is while we have some major developments going on in our community, Tanforan, YouTube, and some housing projects, some of those, the pace of these is somewhat slowing down given the economy. So YouTube is still, of course, very much invested in our city. The Reimagine Tanforan project is still very much going strong. These are just going to take some time, and there's going to be a dip in income while those projects go through their development process until they take off again. So even the Tanforan project, which will be a major boon to this city, we're going to go through some hardship before we realize the pure benefits of that major project. VLF property taxes. I've said it again, and the state's going to continue to target this as a means of balancing its own budget. So San Mateo County residents are going to be in a less beneficial situation. And finally, again, looking down the road, inflation and the general economy, these are just realities we just got to be mindful of as we're looking at building a budget that can be sustained. The unknowns. I think it was Councilmember Hamilton who made the comment about the $1 billion in infrastructure shortfall that our city faces. Earlier tonight, this council authorized moving forward with the enabling resolutions to look at putting a revenue measure on the ballot. That will be very helpful if indeed it passes, but sitting here today, I can't guarantee that such a thing will occur, both that the revenue measure moves forward and that it actually passes. So again, it's an unknown for us. Investment earnings, same. Are we going to continue to have these strong kinds of investment earnings, a more robust investment policy for the city? Might interest rates start to slow down? We don't know. We can't predict that. Employee retention and recruitment continues to be a challenge here in our city as we look at changing certain practices, certain compensation policies. Maybe we can sort of rebuild ourselves to be a more attractive employer to recruit employees as well as retain employees. And finally, to that same extent, the labor agreements. Next year, we will be facing those. What will it mean for us in the future? What kinds of commitments are we going to make to our workforce? So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick Pigueros, the city's chief financial officer. He's going to walk you through more of the budget detail, and of course, at the end, I'll wrap things up. So thank you, council.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Nick Pigueros. I'm the city's chief financial officer, and I want to thank the city manager for giving a great introduction, and I'll walk through the numbers in a variety of different ways and how we view our budget. First, I'd like to start with the budget process. As the city manager indicated, this is a multifaceted and multi-month process. We start our fiscal year clearly on July 1 of each year. In the late spring, autumn, early winter, we begin our budget kickoff with our capital improvement program, also referred to as our CIP, and our operating budget. This year, the budget really started taking off in February, where we sat down with the City Council at its retreat, and we presented a number of items, including proposed budget principles, requested council direction on priority initiatives. We also provided a budget forecast and a preview of the capital improvement program budget. Also in February, the City Council adopted the budget principles and the priority initiatives for 2024-25. In March, we continued our work not just internally on the operating budget, but we also came to the City Council with the capital improvement program package that is included in the budget with a study session. In April, Council took action on two key elements of the budget. First being the fee schedule update, which was processed or approved on April 23rd, and then second, we also provided a preview of what we're discussing tonight. In May, we published the budget document that was published on May 17th and has been available for several weeks for folks to review and engage if there are questions. And then in June of this month, last week, we had a community presentation where the city manager and I presented the budget, substantially similar to this presentation tonight. Our presentation this evening, and then finally council adoption at your next regular meeting. So I will start with a presentation of all funds, the city's budget across all funds. The city is organized into almost 50 distinct funds, 50 distinct accounting. For a private sector, you might consider them subsidiaries of the larger company. Each one is self-supporting. They have their own revenues, expenditures, balance sheet that we account for. And the fund that provides the vast majority of services to the community are the general funds, the single largest of that being the general fund, but there are also other general funds, including our reserves, as well as the Measure G sales tax revenue. The general funds provide for tax-supported services, including public safety, streets, parks, engineering, the senior center, and general administration. And the budget for the general funds in total is about just shy of $80 million with 181 employees. In 25 other buckets, we have our special revenue and capital funds. The special revenue and capital funds are distinct accounting functions that are restricted by laws, grants, city council policy, as well as our capital spending program. The total there is about $68 million and 27 employees. We also have enterprises, which are our business type operations. So this is our water, sewer, stormwater, city net, and parking functions. As business type functions, they are intended to fully support themselves without any support from general taxes. They do that by council adopting rates, consumption or use rates, and collection and whatnot. One of the items this evening that that the council will be discussing is collection of the sewer revenues to provide greater stability and assurances that those revenues are collected to provide to provide the capital programs that Councilmember Medina highlighted under the consent agenda. And then finally, we have a number of internal services and departments and debt service. Sorry, just a little feedback there. These functions this is what it takes to do all of the good services. These are the vehicles, these are the technology, the computers, the lights, the buildings necessary for the city to provide the services. They're called internal services because substantially they do not have in and of themselves a public service outcome. Now, of course, this building is part of our building facilities internal service. However, the programming is the primary public interface, and the programming for this facility, the Senior Center, of course, is funded in the general fund. So as we look at our expenditures, as City Manager highlighted, our total budget is $288.8 million across all funds. The purpose of presenting this particular chart is to show that while the vast majority of city services are paid for by the general funds, that 27% slice there, we also, our largest share is in our enterprise funds, water, sewer, stormwater, city net, and parking. And then our second largest is the third largest is our capital project funds. And those are streets, parks, and facilities. When we look at our 280 positions or employees across all funds, you'll see the distribution here, the largest department being our Public Works Department, which again houses the larger enterprises, water and sewer. We also have public safety, both police and fire. And then finally, the other departments. Highlighted here are the changes for CityNet and City Manager being combined into the same department, and then administrative services with finance, HR, IT. I'll now transition into the general fund, which again is where the majority of public services are provided. The general fund budget is balanced with revenues and expenditures equaling approximately $66.5 million. You'll see here on the revenue side the distribution of our revenues, primarily from taxes, 71%. We also have charges for services, and these are services that include, for example, registering if there's a class that's being offered here at the Senior Center. The registration fees would go to the general fund. Use of money of property, that's the big category that the city manager highlighted earlier. Investment earnings, which has increased considerably over the last several years. Drilling in just a little bit to tax revenues, as it's our largest revenue component. You'll see here on the left chart, we have our various taxes, property taxes being the largest. The chart on the right, or the pie graph to the right of on the right-hand side of the slide, that's a breakdown of property taxes. So property taxes is made up of a number of smaller items. However, cumulatively, we get 44% of the general fund budget from property taxes. I would like to highlight the 11% in lieu VLF property taxes that the city manager mentioned is something that is at risk. This again arises out of a very unique formula that impacts only a few counties in the state, San Mateo County being one of those. And due to those formulas, we are at risk of losing the revenue starting 2 years ago and continuing. It's anticipated to be completely sort of transferred to the state by the end of our 10-year forecast. You'll also see sales taxes here. This is our general sales tax. Important to note when looking at this particular slice, it does not include Measure G, which is a separate general fund. This is just the operating general fund. It also does not include $5 million of tax share agreement monies from the Walmart tax.com tax share agreement. Those monies have been sequestered into a separate fund. And then you'll see the other taxes that we have. By and large, the city's distribution of taxes is rather diversified in comparison to some other cities. Typically, we'll see cities with lots of hotels be very reliant on hotel tax as a significant share of their total general fund pie. And in some communities that don't have hotels, property taxes typically make up a much larger share. So as we look at the expenditures for the general fund, this slide provides the expenditures by department. I guess the most significant piece here when we're looking at the general fund is that our police and fire, our public safety departments are funded almost entirely by the general fund. Public Works, which is our largest department, makes up a fairly small component or portion of the general fund, and that's due to the fact that the department has water and wastewater services, or the enterprises, and internal service funds that are not accounted for in this distinct fund. When we look at the nature of our expenditures, you'll see that about 71% of our overall expenditures in the general fund are salaries and benefits, and that ties very closely with the fact that we are a service-based organization, that almost every service that we provide to the community requires some level of staff support or direct service. Our operating is things like supplies, small capital outlay, whether it be a stop sign or something like that needs to be purchased. And then the transfers out, these are to fund the internal service funds. Because of their separate departments, monies will go from one fund to the other. So as we look at this year's budget, pulling back to the all funds, I want to highlight some of the significant changes that are included in this budget. First and foremost, personnel or employee headcount. The budget requests several new positions in various departments. It also proposes reduction of headcount in the city manager's office, and there is savings resulting from the creation of the administrative services program, or administrative services department. Also, to offset some of the costs of the increased personnel in police, fire, and public works, we have taken police and fire offsetting cost increase. There are reductions to other line items that support and offset the cost increase for a portion of the new personnel. Supplies, equipment, and services, these are substantially increases in costs for contract services that we have, whether they be services that we acquire, telephone, electricity, etc. That's what we have in here. Capital outlay, these are primarily vehicles. All of these are detailed on budget pages 13 through 16 if there's an interest in seeing the breakdown. Use of one-time revenues, the largest piece here is funding for a capital improvement program project for the police radio system. And finally, on this slide, there are two other changes. First is that, as city manager identified earlier, a focus on the recreation and aquatics center finances is of high importance as we move into this new phase of providing these services. We've established a special revenue fund that will provide a transparent, easily identifiable financial picture for this particular fund, and will enable us to manage it more closely. Second, we're recommending that we move the community development program, department, which is our planning, building, and building departments, to a special revenue fund. This is largely in acknowledgement that significant efforts on the advanced planning and the housing element and the general plan are requiring additional services as unfunded state mandates. However, the benefit here is that the Community Development Department does charge for the services provided, and the goal here is that the Community Development Department is fully supporting or their fees support the services provided. And then finally, as you'll note, we have the budget book redesign and update. So moving on to the general fund forecast, we presented a version of this to council, I believe, twice, once at the retreat and then once in February. The forecast looks at two things: our revenues and our expenditures. What you'll see here is a truncated version of the what we expect to be our total change in revenue over the 10-year time frame ending in 2034. Any number of discrete events can impact this. We clearly start with our current year budget, take into consideration that there could very well be a change in sales tax behavior that would significantly increase revenues. The cannabis tax goes far higher than what's anticipated. Those are the types of things that would cause the green the green shaded area to rise. On the flip side, we have a number of expenditures that could cause, and revenue losses that could cause us to go into a deficit. And I would say that the single largest component here, or threat here, would be any actions taken by the state to take money from local agencies. Again, hate to sound like a broken record, but the property tax, the VLF, the vehicle license fee property taxes are our biggest threat here. So given the number of opportunities here, the unlikelihood or the likelihood of, what does this all mean? What staff has done is we've basically taken the midpoint of the various scenarios available. What you'll see here is that we went into this particular budget process with an estimated $4.85 million deficit. That deficit grows over the 10-year period to a total of $18 million. And the purpose of this, I will say that this is, I can almost say with certainty that this is incorrect, this forecast. Forecasts are highly dependent on things that we cannot predict or anticipate. However, the purpose of this is really to put into perspective decision-making or policy decisions that may come before the council in future years. Decision that you make this evening on the budget. Again, the budget is balanced, and one might ask, well, how do we balance this year's budget? So the primary deficit drivers for fiscal year 25 include, initially we had a loss of VLF property taxes that was estimated, and there were a variety of baseline budget adjustments for one-time activity. Effectively, what that means is that there was money that's in our baseline that should not be relied upon in future years, so we adjusted those out. We had personnel increases, not just the standard items that are provided in our labor contracts, but also the unwinding of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, that the city manager mentioned earlier. The reason that's important is that we had previously budgeted, this current fiscal year, we budgeted 9.5 full-time equivalent employees, so 9.5 employees in ARPA, and those are transferring to the general fund in fiscal year 25. And then there was an additional amount primarily for the election and council priorities, which totaled to a $4.85 million deficit. How we balance the budget, as we mentioned at the various touch points in the budget process, we would regularly update our revenue estimates, and we did get some favorable news, particularly on the topic of the VLF property tax. We also are including a repayment of the parking fund loan for this year. We used $1.97 million, or recommending using $1.97 million in one-time revenue for one-time expenditures. This, again, that is listed on page 16, I believe, of the budget. The single largest component there is paying for the third to last year of the pension obligation bonds debt service. So we had issued obligation bonds or pension obligation bonds several years ago to assist with our pension liabilities. Those bonds will be paid off in fiscal year 27. And given that operating expenditure, which is how the bond is budgeted, that operating expenditure will go away in 27. So we're recommending using one-time money this year, likely next year and the year after, and then after that it will go away. And so that's how we were able to close the projected deficit. Some of these are one-time efforts and will require us to really sharpen our pencil as we go forward into the next budget planning phase. Of course, what I've shared with you in the last couple of minutes is not particularly favorable news, but what I do want to assure the community is that this council and past councils have taken very decisive action to ensure that we have monies necessary to support the city in the event of an emergency or an event that we have an economic downturn or there be something unforeseen. What you see here is a summary of the general fund's various reserve accounts. The first is our contingency reserve, which has a target of $6.6 million is the target according to council policy. We're beginning this year with a $10.9 million, we're beginning next fiscal year, July 1 of 2024, with an estimated $10.9 million in that fund. One of the reasons that is higher is that we are sequestering $4 million this year from the Walmart.com fund tax share agreement in the unfortunate event that we do need to repay funds if the litigation does not go in the city's favor. For fiscal year 25, we are recommending sequestering an additional $5 million, which is why that's growing to $15.9 million as a contingency reserve. Of course, one of the more significant challenges that cities face is our economic cycles, economic downturns. The council's policy sets a target of $13.3 million to ensure that we have funds to ride out those peaks and valleys, or mostly valleys, that result from cyclical economic downturns. These funds are here and available for City Council to use in the event that you deem it necessary to use reserves rather than cut services. The last reserve I'll mention is our one-time revenue reserve. This is the bucket where we put money for things that we cannot rely on ongoing. A great example would be if we are able to sell the parcel at the crossing to the auto dealership, those monies would go into this one-time reserve. We recommend using one-time reserve for one-time expenditures, and what you see here is a reduction in this reserve of $7.6 million. Again, this goes back to a slide that I discussed earlier. I think it's 5.6 of this roughly is for a capital improvement program in fiscal year 25. So the bottom line here is that we're projected to end next fiscal year with about $32 million in reserves split across a number of buckets. That puts us in a very healthy place by way of government accounting standards, goals, and targets for reserves. I do want to, however, emphasize, and I don't think I'd do my job if I didn't, that unforeseen natural disasters have proven to be very impactful in the city's finances. And we do anticipate to provide a budget adjustment for this current fiscal year at your next meeting that speaks to expenditures that we do not anticipate receiving reimbursement from FEMA from the 2023 storms. Very briefly, I'll touch on the other funds. There are a lot of them, but I'll speak at a very high level. On the special revenues side, we had $16.8 million spread across 25 funds. What you'll see here are the most significant, our new Recreation and Aquatic Center. Our anticipated revenue is $4.4 million. That is a combination of both user fees and a transfer from the general fund of approximately $1.7 million. We do anticipate that that transfer will need to continue into the future in order to maintain the operational expenditures of $4.46 million. I do want to emphasize that this is the first year of operations, and there are a lot of unknowns, and we will return to the council at mid-year, which is typically in January, late January, early February, with a status report on our revenues and expenditures in this particular category. However, because it is a special revenue fund, when the council receives the monthly cash reports, you will see whether this particular program is in the positive or in the negative on a monthly basis. So it does give that insight. Excuse me, community development as well as a special revenue fund, and we'll see here that revenues are slightly exceeding expenditures. It's very common in building for folks to take their building permit, and services are provided at some point in the future. So it's not uncommon for community development departments to show a net revenue. I don't want to call it a surplus because it is not a surplus. It's revenue that is received for services that will be provided in the future. Gas taxes and Measure A are both revenue sources to support our streets, and then the balance of the other special revenue funds are shown there. Going into our enterprise funds, this is both capital and operating. You'll see here the breakdown across the various funds. Most significant that I'd like to highlight is our water capital and our wastewater capital. Again, as mentioned earlier, these operations are fully self-supporting from the rates that are collected by customers. We have a practice of building the bank for these projects and then designing the projects and putting them and then doing the construction over the course of many years. These appropriations are not fully expected to be expended in 1 year. They typically carry over because projects take a good time to construct. And so finally, I'll hand it back to the city manager for the wrap-up.
Thank you, Nick. So just by way of wrap up, just to go back to the slide I actually started with, if you take nothing else from our presentation today, your budget is balanced. It maintains and expands services for our public. It's a $288 million spending plan for 280 city employees. To remind you, and it's hard to see on this slide, but we've sort of checked off all the steps we've completed thus far, and many of these steps the council has been a part of, the public has been a part of, and we are now down to our final steps of the presentation to the council and then bringing back the enabling resolutions for the council to adopt in 2 weeks. This does not come easily. This is a process that is very staff intensive, and I will dispense with reading all these names to you, but these are the staff members that worked very hard to get this information gathered, assembled, analyzed, digested, and dare I use the term simplified in a way that the council and the public can attempt to understand this. Your executive team and your management teams have worked very hard on this for the past 6 months, and this is the culmination of all that effort. Our recommendation to you tonight is you receive the presentation and then provide direction for preparation of the final city council budget for adoption in 2 weeks. As a reminder, this is my handoff to you. It now becomes the council's budget, and you are welcome to do with it as you see fit. But we hope you start with this foundation, and it's a really strong foundation. My suggestion is if you're going to add something or put something on the table for it to be included in the budget, you give me something back so that we can still remain balanced. It's critical that the council adopt a balanced budget. So with that, Mr. Mayor, this is now time for you and the public to have a conversation.
Thank you. And just for point of my information, do we have any speaker cards on this topic?
I do not have any speaker cards.
So first and foremost, want to thank everyone for their work and effort. It's not easy, and I think some of us who have worked, we know that the city of San Bruno has always tried and has remained very lean in its staffing component. And I know that going to various communities, whether it's San Francisco Board of Supervisor, that each department is having to cut 5% with the contingency that the mayor is asking for, or South San Francisco City Manager that I had to talk with not too long ago. Every council is dealing with this, the VLF, which is really affecting, and South City is talking about possible some services. So this is across the board of Redwood City, and so I know I want to be appreciative of the thoughtfulness that you placed into this, and I'm just wondering, with what can be said, can we, just for everybody's information, kind of state, like, we keep hearing this, we know why, but maybe the public doesn't. Walmart is, we're putting over there because we want to be safe, not sorry, which is a good move. But at the same time, maybe just can be expounded upon so people understand why that's to the point that you can. Mm-hmm.
Let me have the city attorney just quickly explain. Well, let me explain what the council did, and then have the city attorney explain what the legal challenge is. Several years ago, the council set up a sales tax sharing agreement with Walmart.com, which many people know is headquartered in San Bruno. And this tax sharing agreement, in my opinion, was brilliant. Smartest thing this council did, or a council did in San Bruno, to really stabilize the finances of the city. It mirrors, or it models after several other sales tax agreements in various cities, including Cupertino's with City of Cupertino with Apple. San Jose has one with eBay, and there's a few others up and down the state. And when you have the joy of hosting a corporate headquarters in your city, and to the extent they're selling something, there's an opportunity for a sales tax agreement. So what the council did at the time was perfectly appropriate. Frankly, it was a very smart move to help really stabilize the city's finances. Unfortunately, the state had a change of opinion last year, and let me have the city attorney explain what that change of opinion was. Thank you. Mayor Medina and Vice Mayor, City Council members, Tricia Ortiz, City Attorney. So the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration determined that those payments were not appropriate, the payments pursuant to the tax sharing agreement. The city engaged in the appeal process with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, also called CDTFA. That process can take many years. It's essentially asking the city to argue its case to the same decision makers that it's already been working with for a number of years. So the city joined with Walmart.com to take this matter to the courts, to have the courts step in and give us what you would call declaratory relief, which is tell us what the law says, tell us whether or not this is appropriate, interpret the law. So we're involved in that litigation to get certainty as to the status of the tax sharing agreement.
Thank you. Just wanted a reference point. Why don't we begin? If there are questions on the presentation that we received from the CFO and from our city manager on the PowerPoint. Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
Sure. I want to, before I get into questions, I want to acknowledge the fact that this is the fourth budget that I've had the pleasure of receiving from the city managers. And this is the first one that I've been able to confidently say I understand reading the whole thing. And it's not because it's taken me 3 years to learn, it's because, 4 years to learn, it's because of the vast improvements that have been made to the presentation and the layout of the budget. And I want to acknowledge that. It's a much more accessible document. Each section has a preface that's in plain language that anybody can understand what's happening in this particular section, what is this about, and how does that relate to us in real life. So I really, really appreciate the work that's been done to that. I know that's going to be an ongoing effort, and we'll see nothing but improvements there. I also want to thank Mr. Piqueros, our CFO, for meeting to answer the questions that I had. Most of them have been addressed, both in that meeting and I can see the effects of those questions in the presentation. I do have a question about slide 20, which was the breakout of the property taxes. So, which, first of all, thank you. That was something that I had asked for, so I appreciate that. But I'm noticing in the breakdown of the taxes that cannabis is not in there. Is it rolled into something else? I know we only have 6 months. We're only going to anticipate 6 months of it. Where does that appear, if anywhere, within here?
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. It's currently categorized as a sales tax.
Okay.
We will break it out. It's $700,000, and it will be broken out in the future when we have a full year.
Great. All right. Thank you. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else with any questions on the PowerPoint presentation at this time? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So I wanted to follow up a little bit on the slide that shows the balancing measures. And I had a few questions on the assumptions. So on the deficit side, we showed the 2.58 loss of VLF. And I was wondering, on that particular thing, I mean, that's from what I understand, that's still kind of up in the air. And we may get some revenue of that. So how confident are we that we might get some of that? Or are we feeling very pessimistic about seeing any of that come in?
So as the council may be aware, the formula that has caused the shortfall to cities in San Mateo County affected the fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24, and fiscal year 25. You may have read in the paper that legislation has been introduced to make the San Mateo County cities whole for the fiscal year 23 shortfall. I can't predict where the state budget will go, but what we are doing is including the anticipated loss, and the county gives us calculations as to what can reasonably be expected. When we started our budget process, I think I had shared with you that the previous Friday I was in a finance officer meeting at the county, and we got some really bad news that we could expect that San Bruno could expect up to $2.7 million in lost VLF. That was very early. That was in the February timeframe, which in part contributes to the deficit numbers that we see here. We did receive an update from the county just before we printed the budget that said that number, the anticipated loss for next fiscal year is approximately $1.4 million. And so this is a bit of a teeter-tot, is that what it is? Where you go up and down?
Teeter-tot, yeah.
Teeter-tot. One thing that's for certain is that the formula that drives this particular revenue loss, again, it affects San Mateo County primarily. It also affects Alpine and, is it Modoc or Mono? Mono. It affects counties that, it affects a number of counties, San Mateo County being perhaps the largest and most impacted. We don't anticipate that if the state has its own financial challenges, that it would increase those financial challenges by sending San Mateo County more money. However, our legislators, your colleagues in other cities, you and the city managers and finance officers are doing everything we can to advocate our position that we should receive the money. What the county is telling us is that we can all likely expect to lose 100% of the VLF property taxes, which for us currently is about $6.7 million in 10 years. And so that is a structural hole in our budget that will need to be addressed unfortunately, as the teeter-tot that it is, it will change every year.
Okay. And are we carrying any sort of a negative balance from the past 2 fiscal years where the state, I guess in a way, still owes it? But, I mean, how do we account for that?
Yeah, we show it as it's not held as a receivable. We're not anticipating receiving it. If we do receive it, my recommendation would be that we put it into the one-time revenue fund because we just don't know what future budget years will hold for the state.
Okay. And then moving over to the other side of that same chart, the 2.88 revenue estimate from the parking fund, the initial loan to the parking program, where did we take that money from?
We took it from the general fund reserve.
From the reserve. Yep. Okay. So, which reserve? We have so many now.
It was to put apples to apples. I would say it was the one-time revenue reserve.
One-time revenue. Okay. So, ideally, wouldn't we return that to one-time revenue rather than programming it into regular operating?
Yeah. Ideally, of course, it's a policy decision. It was one of the budget balancing measures that we are putting forward for your consideration tonight.
Okay. And I suppose we don't have a lot of other good options. Yeah, you don't have to answer that. And as far as our certainty with that number, are we still feeling pretty positive? I know we're waiting for more data on the program, but are we still pretty confident that that number is achievable?
Yeah, I would like to just clarify that the parking fund loan repayment is not 2.88 million. It's a small component of that. I believe it's 580,000. There are other revenue updates, such as $700,000 for cannabis tax. There are a series of updates that contributed to this 2.8. I just put it in one bucket. My last conversation with the police chief on this program is that I believe we're at expectations, and he can correct me if I'm misspeaking there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, those were my questions. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of thought that goes into making those assumptions, but I like to understand those assumptions because there's a lot of things that could change there, and this is our methodology for balancing. It seems a little precarious, but I think given everything that we have to deal with, it seems reasonable. So, thank you.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a follow-up question on the enterprise fund, one being the city net. So what are the income sources that were factored in to generate the revenue for our forecast?
I can speak, Councilmember Alvarez, thank you for the question. I could speak at a very high level, and our city net director can answer more detailed questions. At the time of preparing the budget, the assumption was that the city net budget was established for substantially as a status quo budget. We didn't have any material information about its disposition, and clearly there are a number of decisions that the council and the city will need to make in the future. So when we look at the city net revenue and expenditure budget, they are substantially the same from the current fiscal year. And I see the city net director taking position if you'd like to ask more detailed questions.
Yeah, good evening. Sandeep Krishnamurthy, city net director. To properly respond to your question, may I just repeat it? So you said you wanted to know the revenue sources for the city net budget? Okay.
The forecasted revenue.
Okay. Thank you. The primary sources, first of all, it's all revenue generated from the operation itself. And the revenue is primarily generated through subscriptions, advertising sales, for the ads that we place on some of the networks that we can place ads in, internet revenue coming in for internet subscriptions, television revenues, and then we have leases that we generate revenue from for leasing pieces of our fiber out to third parties. We also have some income that comes in from the service calls that our technicians make and for which we charge some fees. We also charge rental fees for the equipment that we rent out to our subscribers so that they're able to get our TV and internet signals. And we lastly collect a minimum amount of voice taxes that we pass on through. We collect as revenue and then we pass on through to the government in the form of the fees that we have to pay the Federal Communications Commission. So these are some of the broad heads under which we collect revenues.
Thank you for that. So considering that we raised the rates, and I know that we did lose some of the customers, the income is basically balancing from the losing the customer, but then higher rates?
Absolutely. You stated that absolutely correctly. We generate a higher amount of revenue on a smaller subscriber base based on the revenue on the rate increase we did as of the 1st of August last year. And this year, where we project we're going to end up financially is we're going to be slightly ahead of our expenses. So we're going to make a little more money than we spent.
Thank you.
I can't see you. Councilor Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also wanted to thank staff for being available. Our CFO, Nick Pegueros, thank you for meeting with myself and Councilman Hamilton to go over the details in the budget. The one thing I think it's important for the public to perhaps have a better understanding is just how the RAC, at the cost of that, and how that is just an expected expense for the city that comes out of the general fund to be able to provide a new and improved recreation facility, and how those costs and why it's necessary for the public to do their best to support it when it does open. These buildings are expensive to maintain, and we've never had a building this incredibly up to date, and it takes money to keep it in that condition. So I was wondering if you could just give a little bit of information on the amount of expense and how we do go into it with the expectation that we're not going to make money on it, that's just a loss, for loss of a better word, that we take upon in order to provide our community with an amazing experience.
Thank you, Councilmember Medina. Let me take a stab at this, and then Community Services Director Travis Carlin is sitting behind me. He can jump in as well. You're right, Councilmember Medina. This is a big investment by the community, really through the Community Foundation and the city. And really, it's going to be a tremendous facility. And the reason I was pointing this out as an economic headwind is the amount of money the city is going to continue to invest in this, in addition to the revenues we collect for certain classes and activities. I think, fortunately, we are in partnership with the San Bruno Community Foundation, and we are in conversations right now with how the foundation can help us in these first couple of years so that we can make sure the enterprise really is successful. And we just had a meeting earlier today, and you will hear from Leslie Heidemeyer later on this evening about their budget. And again, I think we have all eyes on the facility, trying to figure out how do we make it successful? What's going to work in this community? What does this community want and expect from the facility? And as I said earlier, it's a general fund contribution, general fund investment. I don't like to use the word cost because it's investing in our community for our community's well-being, and that's going to be $1.7 million. And in years past, those numbers had been much, much smaller, but we're doing much, much more in a much bigger facility. So I will stop there, and Travis, I don't know if you have anything to contribute.
Sure, thank you, City Manager McIntyre. The only thing I'd like to add is that pools cost a lot of money to run, and we have 3 of them. So that's definitely going to be a big expenditure to the city. One of the things that I'm committed to with my team is to continue to look at operations through the first and second, third year and see where we can streamline some of our operations. We do have a lot of staff that it will take to run that facility, but through the first few years of operation, we'll get a better understanding of what our peak times is and where we have to position staff and where we can cut back or streamline our operations.
And the other thing too is we can go back in time, and it used to be, it was subsidized more. So not to this degree because of the magnitude of what was explained, but even when I worked there, I mean, programs and activities for the youth, special needs, the senior center, they are subsidized. Not maybe to the percent they were back in those days. There was a higher degree, but still, you are subsidizing at some fashion for these type of services and programs. Were there, and I know I want to give opportunity too, if there's questions within the budget of the binder on positions or other questions or concerns. I know I do want to acknowledge the reserves. We have done well. I think it was back in 2013, I believe, that policy was set by a council that even after the 210 explosion, putting the $3 million and putting it to an emergency. So when up at San Bruno Avenue, when it was starting to erode, that we had a funding resource for one-time revenue in which to meet that emergency and need. So I'm just glad to see that not every community has that, but that we are fortunate to. In vehicles, I saw somewhere on the senior center bus, but I haven't really seen the senior center bus that I'm accustomed to seeing. I don't know that we even have it anymore, and maybe, I know it seemed to be in the shop a lot. So hopefully we've taken another resource. I know that I want to commend staff back then for the police vehicles, because I was thinking outside the box in order to achieve that desperate need, which I'm hoping has alleviated some of the older models, which now other resources can go to our fleet. But I do want to compliment that, and it sounds like we're back up and doing well in that. I do want to acknowledge that the administrative shared services, that has happened here. We've had that kind of system and makeup before, so this is not a new thing. We're not experimenting. It has been done before. I did notice that under the community services, I noticed that number of participants in the after-school sports programs for the elementary, that it says, and unless I'm reading this wrong, the actual was 210 and 23, 24 was 200, and it says 25, the goal is 89. And it just seemed very drastic, or maybe I'm misunderstanding that. To the same element of the number of special events offered. I understand with the Recreation Aquatic Center being under, it has 10. As a goal, we had 10 this last time, and I don't know if some of those would be coming back as the Recreation Aquatic Center gets underway. I'm even wondering about expanding with that beautiful facility, what else we can do, and in collaboration with acknowledgement and culture and diversity and all of those things. So I'll stop rambling for a second.
Sure. So as far as the special events are concerned, I believe that the number that you're seeing here is really our signature events. We do have a variety of special events that may have been added to this in the 2023 figure, like the small events, like we have several dances here at the center throughout the year, just the smaller scale dances, but I can get some clarification on that for you. As far as the after-school sports program, one of the things that did happen over time is the divestment in the after-school sports program that the YMCA took over from the city. They have a very robust program where they took on that after-school care that we formerly had, and that kind of broke apart during the pandemic years.
That's right. We did make that switch, and so therefore the decrease. But programs and our activities are still being offered to our youth, which are critical times for youth, but they're being done through the YMCA. Okay. Any other question, comments at this time?
Through the chair.
Please, Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make a suggestion on some of the line items that only specifies other. Is there any way that we can distinguish what are those other line items are on all of the, for most of the departments' budget? One with senior center, pretty much most of them has other line item.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarez. Other is, could be, the reason we present them as other is that there can be a number of very small items that if we listed all of them, it would be problematic just from a formatting perspective. Of course, if council or anyone from the community is interested in seeing, what comprises those other, please just reach out to us and we can provide that information.
Thank you.
And then I guess as we're closing on this topic for now, unless there's more you want us to say, okay, city manager says no. I do want to thank you for your time as well. Asking the CFO a question will help me understand this or that, or just how we derived. It is a different budget, as we can remember how large these binders were. You have saved trees, so thank you. I think the new format is, as Councilmember Hamilton said, I've been doing this a little bit, but this became a much more easier document to go through, and I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that if we look number of city council meetings held, it's going probably for staff's opinion in the right direction, which is less. And I think that's important, as we've said about the health and the wellness and work-life balance. So if we can continue that, that would be ideal. And then also, if when we come back, if you could just, or send it out later, what monies or how much of monies in its entirety that we're putting into downtown. So there's the Centennial Plaza, there's garbage cans, there's newspaper racks that I'm sure have been ordered, there's the extra steam cleaning. And so I just want to give that. It was a question that was asked of me, like what, and I know, but there's other resources that have come in, but I just mean a number. But anyway, okay, if nothing else, then I think all of us want to thank staff for their time and all the departments and CFO and your team, and if you'd go back and say thank you, we would appreciate that. With that, we will move on to item B.
Item B, receive report on the fiscal year 2024-25 San Bruno Community Foundation operating budget. Give me one moment. Let me share the presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Leslie Hadamia, and I have been the Executive Director of the San Bruno Community Foundation for the past 9 years. I really appreciate this opportunity to come before the City Council tonight and to give our annual presentation on our budget. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of our budget for the upcoming fiscal year, I'd like to briefly share with you some of the highlights of the foundation over the past year. Once again, we have been very busy administering a broad array of programs that benefit the San Bruno community, utilizing the restitution funds resulting from the tragic 2010 gas pipeline explosion. An overview of our current programs will help provide context for understanding our budget that I'll get to in a few moments. There we go. As you know, the foundation continues to support the city in a variety of ways. Of course, the most notable is the foundation's support of the Recreation and Aquatic Center. As you know, we're supporting this project with 8 individual grants covering different components of the project. Our original commitment was for $50 million, and last year we committed up to an additional $1.5 million for construction contingency. So the foundation's total commitment is now $51.5 million. Thus far, the foundation has paid the city RAC grant payments totaling about $49.25 million, with the latest set of payments totaling about $1.66 million to be made out later this week. By the end of 2024, we expect to pay out the remaining $590,000 in additional grant payments. The board and I had the opportunity to tour the RAC 2 weeks ago, and it's not an understatement to say that we are all extremely impressed with the new facility and excited to see it open for our community this summer. This will be the culmination of years of thought and commitment by both the foundation and the city, and the greatest legacy project for our community coming out of the restitution funds. Another key partnership with the city has been the Centennial Plaza Improvement Project. We are so pleased to support this effort to revitalize downtown San Bruno with a beautiful new gathering space on San Mateo Avenue. As you know, we've committed $500,000 to this project, and we celebrated the project's groundbreaking with the city in April. I think I speak from the entire board when I say we can't wait to see it completed later this year and to really be able to enjoy that space downtown. We're also thrilled to provide additional support for the city's efforts to bolster San Bruno's downtown with a $350,000 grant for a series of downtown beautification efforts. The new landscaping, street pole banners, and marquee sign on the south end of San Mateo Avenue will create a more welcoming environment in our downtown business district. We've also been happy to support San Bruno's sister city relationship with Narita, Japan. After a pandemic-induced hiatus, the relationship was jump-started last summer with the first delegation since 2019. At the invitation of the city, one of our board members, Secretary Raul Gomez, joined the mayor and other representatives of the city in the San Bruno Park School District in visiting Narita last summer. And when the Narita delegation visited San Bruno in March, the foundation provided $2,500 in grant funding to the city to help fund hospitality and transportation services as the city hosted our visitors from Japan. In addition to the city, we've also partnered with the San Bruno Park School District on several initiatives, most of which are wrapping up this year. In 2022, we awarded $35,000 in grant funding to the school district for field trips and assemblies. After several school years marked by remote learning, social distancing, and increased mental health challenges, we wanted to make sure San Bruno students had the opportunity to leave the school campus and be exposed to new experiences at art museums, parks, concerts, and other community venues. The elementary schools in Parkside were able to use the grant funds over the past 2 school years to underwrite field trips and assemblies on site. The Music Education Strategic Initiative was originally envisioned as a 3-year, $500,000 investment starting in 2017 to make music education a hallmark of San Bruno's public schools. The initiative has been extended several times, in part due to COVID-related challenges, and in 2022, the board approved a further extension of the initiative at the request of the previous school district interim superintendent, who wanted to jumpstart a new sixth grade music program at Parkside. For the past 2 years, this funding has helped launch the new sixth grade music program, which allows sixth graders to participate in year-long music classes, such as instrumentals, chorus and vocal music, and music exploration, with the goal of sparking a passion for further music instruction. The Cappuccino High School music program has also continued to receive funding for transportation and other costs related to performances and competitions, replenishing the instrument supply, and instrumental vocal sectional coaching. In addition to our strategic grant making, we also run 2 in-house programs. The first is the Community Grants Fund, which allows local community groups to apply for funding of up to $25,000 for programs that benefit the San Bruno community. At the end of 2023, we awarded our 8th set of community grants, which totaled $300,000, thanks in part to a generous $100,000 donation from YouTube and Google.org. The 26 grants went to a diverse set of community groups, as you can maybe see if you have really good vision on this slide. The funded programs included a number of social service programs, as well as programs supporting our public schools and our youth. We will launch our 9th community grant cycle at the beginning of July with an application deadline of September 18th. Over the past 8 years, we have awarded 186 community grants totaling $2.3 million. Our final program I want to mention tonight is the Crestmore Neighborhood Memorial Scholarship, which we launched in 2016 to honor the community members who most directly endured the 2010 gas pipeline explosion. This scholarship assists San Bruno students who have demonstrated a deep commitment to the San Bruno community with the cost of attending college. Last Wednesday, we honored our 9th set of Crestmore scholars, 10 outstanding young people who are receiving college scholarships totaling $160,000. We thank the city council members who attended our scholarship presentation last week and hope you were as impressed as we are with this year's class of scholars. Since 2016, we have awarded scholarships totaling not quite $1.4 million to 91 Crestmore scholars. And finally, before we get to the budget, I want to give an update on the board's strategic planning process. The board did a preliminary assessment of our post-RAC strategy in 2021, but we felt that it was necessary to revisit our strategies after several years of major market turbulence, as well as the possibility of other large legacy project investments like the RAC arising. We originally hoped, as you did, that the RAC project would be completed by the end of 2023, and so we began taking a fresh look at our post-RAC program and investment strategies last fall and into the beginning of 2024. We originally thought we'd have refined our strategy for the start of the upcoming fiscal year. After reviewing our strategy and history up to this point, the board began consideration of 3 main options. The first, following an endowment model, under which the foundation is sustained in perpetuity at a relatively low annual budget level. The second option of spending down the remaining funds over an extended period of time, for example, 20 years, which is the option the board favored in 2021 when we did this exercise. Or the third option of spending down the bulk of the remaining funds, probably about $25 million, in the near to midterm on 1 or 2 more additional large legacy projects and winding down other programs. The board looked at those options and weighed the pros and cons of each. We are trying to determine the preferred use for the remaining restitution funds and how we can make the most meaningful impact with those funds. The board has had a robust discussion of the 3 options, ultimately agreeing to set aside the endowment model, which would result in a relatively modest annual payout of less than $1 million a year to support the foundation's programs and operations in order to maintain the purchasing power of the endowment's corpus. Instead, the board has decided to focus its deliberations on the other two options and take a pause while both the city and the San Bruno Park School District sort out their paths for some major capital investment projects and initiatives that the foundation might be interested in investing as a legacy project. $25 million probably isn't enough to fund most or all of a major capital project, as we did with the RAC, but it could make a significant difference in the city or school district's ability to complete a major capital project. The board is willing to consider whether investment in such a project would be a desired use of the remaining funds rather than making much smaller investments over the next 20 or so years. We have been monitoring the council's consideration of putting a revenue measure on the November ballot to support a number of capital investment projects. The school district is also likely to put a parcel tax on the November ballot, is waiting for the sale of the Engvall site to be finalized, and has also identified some major strategic initiatives, including capital projects. The board will restart its deliberations likely at the end of 2024 or early 2025, once the city and school district are further along in their planning for these capital projects. Once the board makes some decisions regarding its program strategy, it will also review its investment strategy to make sure that supports its program goals. And at the request of several community members, that the foundation adopt a values-based investment strategy, the board has agreed to educate itself on what values-based investing is and what that might look like for a community foundation like the San Bruno Community Foundation. So that's what we've been doing over the past 2 months, and a slight preview of what we have going forward. I hope you all agree that the foundation has had another busy and productive year in service to our San Bruno community. So now let me move on to the budget. Before I provide a detailed account of the FY 24-25 budget, I think it's instructive to review the overall financial health of the organization. This chart provides a complete picture of the foundation's overall financial history and health and includes both the investment portfolio managed by our team at Sandhill Global Advisors, as well as other funds, including the initial funds received from the restitution funds to support the foundation's early operations prior to establishing the investment counts. So if you'll remember, the initial grant from PG&E was $68.75 million in cash and 5 vacant property lots then valued at $1.25 million, which totaled the $70 million in restitution funds, the figure that we often hear. The city sold 3 of the 5 lots for nearly $1.25 million, and the city converted the remaining 2 lots into the redone Earl Glenview Park. So total initial assets included the $69.8 million that was transferred to our Fidelity accounts in 2016, but also about $700,000 in cash that the city had transferred to us prior to that time to pay our bills up until that period, which covered our expenses from inception through June 2016. Investment gains are on the investment portfolio, the funds managed by Sandhill. Our donations and other income are funds that we received and spent but never flowed through our investment portfolio, but they still were important to note. Even without active fundraising, we've brought in about $1.9 million over the past 9 years. Total funds dispersed, actually paid out, is about $60.3 million. Total expenses have been $63.2 million, with April 30th, 2024 liabilities of $2.9 million, leaving net distributed amount of $60.3 million. Grants and scholarships hit our books at the time that they are accepted, but many are paid out over multiple years, which is what results in the liabilities of $2.5 million. In sum, the financial health of the foundation is strong. The foundation has benefited from a robust stock market despite some market volatility and inflation in recent years. It's also benefited from prudent investment management by and guidance from our team at Sandhill and solid fiscal management practices and policies by our board and staff. The fiscal year 24-25 budget should be reviewed in the context of this overall financial picture. It's also instructed to review the budget in the context of the board's strategic planning deliberations. At this time last year, we expected the board to be finalizing the foundation's post-RAC program investment strategies by now, which potentially would have altered the development of this year's budget. But since RAC construction is yet to be completed and the board's strategic planning process is currently on pause, I've constructed the FY 24-25 budget following the same strategy and process as previous year's budgets. The budget assumes that the foundation will continue to offer the Crestmore Scholarship and Community Grants Fund programs funded by payout from the quasi-endowment, as well as continue to consider some small and medium-sized strategic grants, which along with our operating expenses will be funded by payout from our strategic pool. We are hopeful that the board will complete its strategic planning process for the post-RAC era by the end of FY 24-25, and thus the FY 25-26 budget would reflect any adjustments to our program and investment strategies. It's also worth noting that our budget is not a typical nonprofit budget where the goal is for expenses to equal revenues. Most nonprofit budgets are income-driven because the nonprofit is able to spend only the funds it expects to bring in that year. In contrast, as a result of our ample investment portfolio, the foundation's budget is expense-driven. Our budgeted income, in quotes, consists primarily of transfers from our assets to our operating budget to cover our cash needs during the fiscal year, along with a relatively small cohort of donations and interest income earned in our operating accounts. We do not sink and typically do not achieve a balanced budget, as our cash needs do not necessarily match our recorded expenses in a given year. This is because, as I said earlier, we record grant and scholarship commitments as expenses at the time the grant agreements are executed and scholarships are awarded, but grant and scholarship payments are often made out over several fiscal years. As a result, the fact that the FY 24-25 budget expenses are slightly higher than the funds available for operations should not be a cause for concern. The calculations of our expenses and funds available for operations should be analyzed separately, as they are best based on different needs and factors. So let me start with the expenses. We have three main categories of expenses. Please note that personnel expenses, the first category I'll mention, are slightly higher, taking into account cost of living increases for staff. Our non-personnel support costs are expected to be higher next year, but less by a little bit than the 23-24 budgeted amounts, mainly due to a combination of one, budgeting based on contract ceilings and providing flexibility for unanticipated expenses, and two, several new expenses. Budgeted amounts operate as ceilings, and I'm very cost-conscious in all purchasing decisions, so that actual costs frequently turn out to be lower than the budget projections. Please note that in the current fiscal year, 23-24, actual non-personnel support costs are projected to be almost 27% or $52,000 lower than the budgeted amount. I'm not going to go through every expense line in our budget as detailed in the staff memo, but they are in the memo for you, which I hope you've read, and I'm happy to answer at the end any questions you may have about them. Let me elaborate a little bit further on our program expenses. As you can see, we have a regular budget outlay of $300,000 for community grants, the same as the previous, I believe, 7 or 8 years. The allocation for Crestmore scholarships is $165,000, which is a $5,000 increase from the past year. This increase would allow the foundation to maintain the same number of scholarships we gave out this past year for two of our main categories, but would also allow us to award one more scholarship in our high school to community college category, which tends to have a very small applicant pool. It's a modest increase, just $5,000, but one that more properly reflects the best distribution of scholarship awards based on the typical applicant pool. The strategic grants line is budgeted at $2.5 million. This is a placeholder for potential strategic grants and could be used to fund one or more strategic grants and gives the board the flexibility to consider strategic grant-making opportunities that may arise. The $2.5 million placeholder would enable the board to consider the city's recent request for startup programming funding for the RAC, which the city introduced at last week's board meeting. It also allows the board to consider several other smaller strategic opportunities, such as for Community Day if the city decides to hold that in 2025, the Narita Sister City Exchange Program, school athletic field improvements, which the district has approached us about, and other programs supporting the public schools. Fiscal year 24-25 will likely serve as a reset year as the board continues to thoughtfully consider its strategies and priorities once the RAC project is completed. The $2.5 million strategic grant placeholder allows the foundation to make some meaningful smaller to medium-sized investments while also identifying major potential strategic initiatives in the coming years. I'd also just like to remind you that all strategic grants require specific board approval, not just inclusion in the budget. Decisions on specific strategic grants will take place as proposals are vetted during the course of the year. For other grants, we also budget $10,000 so that we are able to respond to some community grant type requests that are urgent and come outside the typical community grants fund cycle. So this slide shows you a breakdown of our income. We typically budget operating income to be very low. We currently don't expect any donations, but that may change during the year as it did this year. Miscellaneous income is usually unexpected, such as when a grantee returns a portion of a grant that was expensed in an earlier year. The accounting consultant and I decided to zero out interest income this year. This line has always been difficult to predict and is relatively small. Our bank accounts are non-interest bearing, and the liquidity pool account balance is likely to be substantially lower in the upcoming fiscal year, with all but less than $600,000 in RAC grant payments expected to be paid out by the end of the current fiscal year. Most of our operating funds come from transfers from investments. Remember again that our funds available for operations are based on our cash needs for the year. We assume that all personnel expenses and non-personnel support costs will be paid out during the fiscal year, but not necessarily all of our program disbursements, which may be paid out over more than 1 year, than the 1 year in which they were expensed. To understand transfers from investments, it's important to remember the rationale behind creating the 3 different investment accounts. Based on the results of the first community listening campaign in 2015, the board decided to designate about $55 million of the restitution funds to establish the strategic pool to be spent outright on strategic initiatives, including at least one major community facility project, which turned out to be the RAC. The board designated $15 million for the quasi-endowment, which, while the strategic pool could cover strategic grants and operating expenses, has been intended to fund just the cash needs for the Community Grants Fund and the Crestmore Scholarship and be allowed to grow. It's actually grown from that original $15 million all the way to $23 million as of the end of May. The liquidity pool is our third investment account, which was created to serve as a holding account for expenditures planned in the subsequent 0 to 24 months. Its purpose is to mirror the foundation's operating bank accounts, and it may be funded from both the quasi-endowment and the strategic pool. The investment goal for the liquidity pool is to preserve the principal balance of all funds directed into this pool, and as such, capital preservation and liquidity are the primary objectives. The quasi-endowment transfer is based, again, on our cash needs for the Crestmore Scholarship and the Community Grants Fund. There are some restricted donations and residual quasi-endowment payout carried forward from previous fiscal years, so the quasi-endowment transfer is not quite the full cash needs amount. A 1.64% quasi-endowment payout, and according to our policy, it has to be expressed as a percentage, that would provide about $352,000, which is just above the amount we need for the year. The past couple of years, the main driver behind the transfers from the strategic pool was the remaining set of RAC grant payments. But we have already transferred all funds necessary to fulfill those commitments to the liquidity pool. So the liquidity pool balance as of the end of the current fiscal year, of that amount, about $590,000 is earmarked for the remaining RAC grant payments. And therefore, no further transfers are needed this year from the strategic to liquidity pool for the RAC. Rather, the entire strategic payout will be used to cover cash needs for the other strategic grants and operating expenses. We expect to pay out the balance of the Centennial Plaza Improvement Project grant and the full amount of the Downtown Beautification grant over the next year. We are also putting in a placeholder of $2.5 million for other strategic grants, as mentioned earlier. And as I mentioned before, we also expect to pay out all of our operating expenses during the year. That leaves us with a total cash strategic need of just under $4.3 million. Of that amount, nearly $1.4 million will be covered by the carry forward from the current fiscal year budget. I also always include a buffer of $100,000 to give us wiggle room in our operations, which results in a strategic payout of just over $3 million. So that is our budget. Last Wednesday, the board approved a resolution that did a number of different things. It approved our FY 24-25 budget. It approved the FY 24-25 quasi-endowment payout rate of 1.64%, resulting in a transfer of $352,218. It approved a transfer from our strategic pool to our liquidity operating pool account of just over $3 million to cover our cash needs, and directed me to submit our budget to the City Council for approval as required by our bylaws, which is why I'm here tonight. Note that all of the transfer amounts are ceilings. The budget resolution gives the executive director the discretion to divide the transfers into smaller increments, set the timing of the transfer of those increments, and to transfer less than the approved amount based on the foundation's actual cash flow needs. So tonight, we respectfully ask the City Council to approve the foundation's budget when it comes before you at the end of this month. This action will allow the foundation to continue moving forward on its current trajectory to benefit the San Bruno community. And before I close, I'd just like to thank the council and members of the city staff for your partnership and collaboration this year, as it has been over the past number of years. We want to especially note the support of the city manager's office, the community services department, the finance department, and the entire RAC team. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for the information in the report, and just for clarification to our attorney and our manager, this is receiving the report. There is not action tonight on this item. That will be coming back on, I believe, the 25th with the budget. Am I correct? Yes. Thank you. Okay, with that, colleagues, questions on the presentation? Any speaker cards?
I do not have any speaker cards.
Any comments? If not, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to go into public hearings. A lot of you have been very patient, so I want to, just so we can move around, how many are here or plan to speak on the solid waste collection services with Recology? One, two? And then the next one, because I'm hearing there's already two maybe here. This is in regards to, thank you. Holding a public hearing, this is in regards to the sewer services charges, and then they'd be collected through the county. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So, okay. Seems like that one seems to be, the item B seems to be more popular this evening. So, Council, I'm going to move B up. You all right with that? Move B up so that those who wish to speak can and go home and do what you need to do. So let's go to item B first, please.
Item B, hold a public hearing and consider adoption of a resolution ordering the annual sewer services charges for fiscal year 2024 to 25 to be collected on the County of San Mateo property tax roll and authorizing certain actions in connection therewith.
Okay, thank you. So this is the time set for the public hearing. So we're going to open the public hearing, and there you've heard what the clerk has read, and let me ask the clerk to record and show. Let us know how many notices we have received.
The city received 22 written protests against the sewer service charges being collected on the County of San Mateo property tax roll. The number of written protests do not represent the owners of a majority of the parcels of property described in the report.
Okay. Does staff have a report on the proposed resolution ordering the sewer services charges being collected on the San Mateo County property tax roll, please? Staff.
Mayor Medina, council members, I just wanted to clarify that there should be another opportunity before the close of the public hearing for people to submit a written protest and then have a final calculation of the protest at that time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Nick Pegueros. I'm the city's chief financial officer. I will walk through a brief presentation here regarding the item before you. So our objective is for City Council to conduct a public hearing on the collection of sewer charges for next fiscal year, beginning July 1, 2024, and then subsequently adopt a resolution ordering the collection of the charges on the property tax roll. By way of background, the City Council adopted a resolution in early 2023 that adopted a 5-year sewer rate structure. These accompanying that sewer rate structure was a detailed rate study that identified both the operating as well as the capital improvement needs and the financing necessary to support those the sewer enterprise function, both in current and future years. Just about last year, City Council adopted Ordinance 1938, which directed that staff return this evening with with the necessary actions to place the sewer collection charges on the tax roll. Reasons for that transition, for the transition of collecting the bills. First and foremost, this introduces an operational efficiency for the collection of these services. Collecting the charges through the property tax bill guarantees that the city will collect the funds that the sewer enterprise needs in order to fund both operations and capital. Since the transition of garbage off of the city's combined utility bill, the utility bills will now only be for water, which is something that we had heard from a number of residents, that our bills are larger than other communities, and that has been historically due to the fact that we had both garbage, sewer, and water on the same bill. The bi-monthly bills for residents, as well as the monthly bills for commercial accounts, will now only show water if City Council moves forward with this action this evening. And then I'd like to highlight that of the 24 sewer agencies in our county, which includes San Bruno, 18 already collect the sewer charges on the property tax roll. If council approves this action tonight, it'll be 19 of the 24 agencies in the county. When I reference the guaranteed collections, the staff report identifies that there are uncollected or delinquencies totaling approximately $700,000 in this as of May 31. Those amounts do reflect both. Mayor, would you like for me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Just to pick up back where I was, the guaranteed collections is an important component of the financing for our wastewater system. As mentioned in the staff report, there's approximately $700,000 of uncollected or delinquent accounts for wastewater alone. That includes both current and closed accounts that are over 30 days delinquent. If we look at strictly accounts that are 180 days delinquent, the $700,000 decreases to $300,000. Sadly, that $300,000 is largely the result of closed accounts and may be very difficult for us to ever recover. This action would prevent that from happening in the future by ensuring that the revenues are collected as part of the annual property tax. On May 9th, we did send notification to property owners of the public hearing this evening. So by way of process, how this process has transpired, we conducted a fiscal year 24-25 sewer service charge levy report, which is included in the packet. That report lists all assessor parcel numbers, APNs, and site addresses, and provides the amount that will be placed on the property tax for this upcoming year. The amounts are calculated based on the average water consumption in the winter. This is our standard practice. I don't quite know exactly how far back this goes, but it's been in place for over 23 years. When we talk about the average water consumption in the winter, we are looking at the 4 months, January, February, March, and April for our customers. The understanding is that those months tend to be the wetter months, the greater rainfall, and the amount of water that a customer consumes is relatively, for landscaping, which is water that would not otherwise go down the into the sewer system, that's when the landscaping water is the lowest, and therefore serves as a reliable proxy for the calculation of sewer. And again, I do want to highlight that that's a long-standing city practice, at least over 25 years. We then, once we had the average water consumption, we applied the rates that the City Council adopted effective July 1 of 2024. We did review all of the income qualified rate reductions. This has historically been referred to as the low income program or low income discount of about 25% of service charges. We did identify those customers who received the discount and have applied that to the assessment that's listed in the report. We also took the opportunity to look at suspected water leaks in the winter months. We can see through our metering system if water spikes, and typically that is related to a leak. We do not historically we have provided customers the opportunity to appeal their sewer charge based on leaks during the winter, and we've taken a proactive measure this year because of the change in the billing process to apply those as appropriate. The action before the council does make one exclusion, and that is for the master metered homeowners associations with greater than 100 parcels. These homeowners associations are managed by, or these properties are managed by a homeowners association. We have had no difficulty collecting the sewer charges or water charges from these associations. They pay reliably and on time. It was in review of the cost benefit of billing these homeowners associations, billing each parcel, which would sum about 1,800 parcels. The cost benefit of that just didn't appear to be significant, especially considering that we have no delinquent accounts with those customers. So there are two master metered homeowners associations that fall into this category, and they will continue to receive their billing on a bi-monthly basis. The remaining timeline, pending City Council's action this evening, we will transmit our consultant on our behalf will transmit the necessary reports to the county to ensure that the amounts are recorded. Property owners will see this charge on their property tax bill, which comes into which generally received in the October timeframe. As some may know, the property tax bill is due in two installments. The first is due in December, the second is due in April. With this, we will stop billing for wastewater services effective July 1, so residents will not receive a wastewater bill. Now, if they have a delinquent wastewater bill, they will continue to see the amount owed, and we will continue to collect that, but that will be separate from the current charges that are due. And then we will repeat this process next year, should the council give direction to move forward. So again, just to recap, our recommendation is that you conduct the public hearing and you adopt the attached resolution. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody for their patience. Now is the time for the public testimony. All interested persons may testify for or against the sewer service charges being collected by the San Mateo County property tax roll. The city clerk will call out the slip she has, but I saw several other hands go up, so we may, we'll make it work. So first, city clerk.
Speaker cards, I have Anna Blulow, as well as Jody Young.
Wait, Paul, I'm not hearing the mic. Hold on real quick, please.
Check, 1, 2.
Yep,
check.
there you go. Perfect.
I've been living here since 86, or 82 rather, and I went to a meeting in 11, and Chris Pallas was the person I saw up there, and they talked about the water bill, and they didn't like talking about the service charges. I sort of brought that up. How come we talk about the water bill and no service charges? Now I got an answer. It's really interesting. It says here, the charges is necessary to improve efficiency and reduce the number of delinquent unpaid accounts, and the advisory rates charged to all sewer customers. Now, the CFO just mentioned about $100,000 in debt, and wow, it's on my back, and it's on a lot of other people's back that we're going to have to do this. The only thing I could see that would help, could you make it quarterly instead of biannually? It would be easier on my budget. I'm 80 years old. I know I don't look it, but it would help to ease up. The other thing I read too is you have a fixed income, or I should say billing with water bills. That would be great. And outstanding with what's going on here is my first time back in a long time. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. And thank you to all for your patience. I know it's after 9:30.
Hello, I'm Yang Gao, and lived in San Bruno for about now 14 years. I'm a homeowner. I'm opposed to the proposal of collecting the surcharge in the property tax for a few reasons. First of all, it really decreased the transparency of the utility cost as a homeowner. Because once the sewer cost is folded into the property tax, it caused an apparent increase in the property tax without, without a very clear understanding of the utility bills. So usually utility is separate from the property tax, and it is an ongoing cost of maintaining a property. But folding the sewer cost into the property tax is really diminish the transparency of living cost, basically, in San Bruno. Also, another reason that I'm opposed to this proposal is that it caused probably also difficulties in paying the apparent increase in property tax. Property tax, as they are now, is already large, and it requires a lot of budgeting for homeowners. causing the sewer fees folding the sewer fees into the property tax would cause a significant increase in the payment of the property tax. So that would cause some difficulties for homeowners because usually the sewer fees are paid by once every 2 months. Now, if it's going to be in the property tax, then it's going to be paid once every 6 months, basically twice a year. So that's going to cause some budgeting difficulties for homeowners as well. So, yeah, and then there's also a concern of the errors that that's basically shows up in the sewer fees. If that error is part of the property tax, then that kind of a correction would be more difficult than just being a separate item.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Ann Bulow. This morning I went to City Hall because according to the paper it said that I could go down there in person and ask for my rates. I was told that, oh no, they're going to put them online, you don't need to get them here. There were about 5 of us there. Another man had been there and he had been refused to find out what his taxes or his sewer usage would be. I was finally not finally, she was very good about giving me the information for I have my house and I have a rental. And my concern was the rental, we're paying the water and garbage, or the sewer. So then now I will be paying it for them. And basically, when I was listening to tonight's thing, or your conversations, on that Article 6H, where they were talking about replacing sewerage, are we going to get money from the County of San Mateo to do the reconstruction of or the repairing of our sewer system? Because I'm thinking that money has to come from somewhere. So is it going to come from the homeowners as well? That was one question. The other thing is well, probably not pertaining to everybody, but with older folks, now it's going to look like they have an extra. For me, it will be $197.12 for the next, until December, or when we get our property tax, that it'll look like I have that much money to buy extra food, I can pay off some bills, and then I'm going to get socked with a property tax. Thank God I have on my own home. I've been living in San Bruno since 1955. So I have Proposition 13. So my rate is going up $1,287.94 on my property tax. Now on my rental, because I just had it refurbished and taken care of, there's only 1 month of, that one is going to be $890. Although I'm already paying $15,000 because it was reassessed when I got the house. So, I mean, it doesn't look like a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. And to have it all come at one time, or I know that, thank you, just concerned.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, council members. Name is Jody Young. Living here in San Bruno for about since 2011, so a good little bit of years. really concerned. I had no idea that we were all going to get hit with an over $1,000 increase on our property taxes. I don't know how it is that you're going to find the $700,000 that are delinquent, but you do have means to go and collect that money. You can also probably kiss any tax proposal from the school district, any tax proposal from you, anything goodbye, because you just raised our taxes over $1,000 for each household. It's so much easier to pay that on a monthly basis or bi-monthly or however it is that you charge us. Getting socked with it all at one time, it's just not okay. And we'll see that. And hopefully, like I said, just a little concerned with this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Next speaker, please.
Howdy. First thing I'd like to say is the gentleman over there made reference to, he had a lot of complaints about the cost of the water bill, and it's, you know, a lot of people are concerned about that. And he tried to say, well, you know, the sewer or the garbage was added on to that. Let's forget about the garbage part. Your water bill's high enough as it is. You raking in some bucks because of that. I have property that I rent out, so I'm going to have to increase their rent, which makes me look like a bad guy because you guys aren't getting the money you think you deserve. The other thing is, you know, you don't like the fact that you're $700,000 out of pocket. Well, that's all right. I don't like the fact that you bill me for my sewer for a 4-month period. You bill me continuously throughout the year. You bill me for what I use, not what you assume I use. Thank you. You have a chit chat.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Nelson, and I've lived in San Bruno since 1982. And I got this in the mail, and I thought, oh my God, it never ends. It never ends. Everybody has an idea how to collect money, but they don't consider the people that have to pay it on a regular basis. I have relatives that live in South City. His water bill is half of my water bill on a regular basis. They tell me I use so much water, and I don't use any because I don't water anything. The only water I use is in the house itself. There used to be 4 of us. Now there's only 2 of us. And yes, we are getting up in age and we're older. So I don't see how this benefits anybody in San Bruno other than you people, okay? Because the adding of an extra $1,200 to $1,600 to your tax bill, not considering that I'm under Prop 13, so it's only going to go up $200 a year every year, added on to that. And then our governor's added on the homeless bill. How much is that going to cost us? How do you expect the elderly people to stay in this community? How do you expect them to even survive? It's tough on them now. They can't buy their medication. I don't understand how you could sit there and constantly raise, and raise until people just die or leave. I guess that's my next consideration, whether I want to stay in San Bruno, whether I could actually afford it at this rate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please. Were there any other speakers? Okay, this is the final opportunity for owners of property upon which the sewer service charges are imposed to submit a written protest and have it counted in determining the existence of the majority protested. Are there any other speakers that have not spoken?
I have spoken, but I have one more question.
You have a question? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, basically, if this proposal goes through, is the next going to fold the water bill into the property tax as well?
Okay, thank you. All right, there were several, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And City Clerk, is there any additions from the 22 written that you had said earlier?
No, I have not received any in person nor via email. So the number remains 22.
Okay, we did have several questions, comments, so it is determined that there is not the majority of protest written letters. So we had, first question was quarterly instead of biannually. So I'm just going to start going through it if you see what I have. And
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The property taxes are billed twice. The payments are due twice a year. They can't be paid quarterly, to the best of my knowledge.
Property tax can be paid quarterly. Is that what you just said?
No.
No,
They
cannot. I'm
be
sorry.
paid
I was reading the next question, so I'm sorry. There was concern about the transparency of the cost, because now where you might see it by monthly, you're going, oh, okay. So any?
Yeah, so we are working on preparing a notice to property owners that provides the amount that is included that will be included in their property tax bill, so they have the opportunity to budget accordingly. As I mentioned earlier, customers will stop receiving the sewer portion of their bill effective their July statement, and then the amount that's being placed on the property tax is effectively the same amount that would have been billed over 6 billing cycles for a commercial or for a residential customer, or 12 billing cycles for a commercial customer.
So that goes into the next, which was folks went down trying to budget. So now they want to kind of get that information. And yes, eventually it was obtained, but so something will be going out in the mail that helps. So how can we have folks, because if you ask me right now what it will be for me for 6 months or a year, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look and add it up. I just don't know. But anyway.
So
I want him to say it.
I'm sorry.
It was one of the questions.
So there is one clarification on my last on the transparency question. The sewer charge will be listed as a line item on the property tax bill. It will be listed as a special charge. There will be a phone number that customers can call if they have questions about that. To your next question, Mr. Mayor, the report is available online. We are working to figure out how to be more proactive and send a notice to customers that will provide them with their 2024 or their assessment for next year.
Now, one of the last questions was, could this happen with the water?
I believe that technically it's possible. The challenge with water is that it fluctuates every month, and so from an operational perspective, it would be very difficult to collect the amount of money to adjust on a monthly basis. It would not, as of right now, I can't say that staff would recommend that transition. However, if that's something that we want to explore, of course, I believe it's within the possibility, according to city attorneys nodding yes. I wouldn't, given the fluctuation, it would be highly, very challenging to do an annual assessment.
And the question, but just because it was asked, so with the county receiving the monies, does that mean they're paying for the infrastructure of our system?
The county is strictly serving as a collector of the sewer charges. They're remitting those back to the city for a small service charge. I believe it's $1.85 per parcel. per year. The amount that was referenced, or the agenda item that was referenced by the member of public, is a city-funded project that we're using current sewer ratepayer and past sewer ratepayer collections to fund. That will not change, and it will. And the rate structure that's been approved by City Council will not change for the next 4 years as adopted.
Okay, and then of course, which anybody knows that the state in Sacramento put on new bills, laws, and then they trickle down to the counties and they trickle down to the cities, and then we have to figure out where the money comes from. And that's just in general. That's how it works. And then they take redevelopment or they take VLF. So we don't get everything. Because there was a comment made that it only benefits us. Well, each one of us will be paying as well, but we are not, the city council does not get anything from it being switched from one billing process to the other. We personally are not. The 5 of us are not. If it is about collecting accounts receivable, we had made huge inroads under a former finance director, huge. With COVID, of course, everything stopped. There was no, you were not allowed to turn off services and stuff. And so that is a reality of what happens. People do walk out on accounts, as we know. What was it? Not getting what we deserve. Just the collections of the ARs. We're going to continue to try to collect on the ARs that we already have. However, what it will do is the county will now pay 100% of what is owed. So the money will come from the county, and the county then deals with that, unless I'm incorrect. And so therefore, going forward, that won't be a challenge. Nick?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. The county will pay the city regardless of whether it actually collects the funds. It has mechanisms in place to collect funds that are not available to the city, and so we will receive 100% of the revenue, which is important for both cash flow reasons for our capital program. But also, should we need to issue debt to fund a very large capital project, this will give certainty with our revenue collections and viewed favorably by bond rating agencies. And if I could, just one, the delinquent accounts affect all wastewater customers. If we can't collect the money, that money eventually works its way back into the rate structure for everyone. So the ability to ensure that we receive, that we collect the money that is owed is a benefit to the system.
Okay, and I believe I got asked for the questions, and I was just turning to one or two colleagues. I think if there was others, let me know. Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Marty.
Somebody asked about errors and how would errors be caught, like if they looked at their tax bill and it was like, oh my gosh, it's way higher, how could they resolve it?
Yeah, so we would encourage residents to contact our office, and we will research that to confirm that the tax assessor has applied the appropriate amount, and we'll work with the assessor's office to make any remedies that are needed for that.
And through the mayor, and then you said that that contact information is going to be included on the property tax bill as part of that line item?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've gotten through some of the questions that were asked, and I appreciate those. With this, I'm going to ask council if we can have action to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Okay, now to council. We've heard public input, and if you had questions on the presentation and or other items.
I'll go ahead.
Councilmember Hamilton.
It's been mostly addressed already from the questions that came from the public. I had the same ones, which was basically how will folks see their sewer charges accumulating before they get their property tax bill. So it sounds like we're working on that. It was the full listing was included in the staff report. So I immediately did a Control F to find my address, and now I'm looking right at my number, so I know what that number is. I know what that number is. I know what's going to be added exactly to my property tax bill when I get when I get it at the end of the year, and so I can budget for it. But not everybody is reading our staff report, so we just need to make sure that we do a really good job of getting that out there, and not only for homeowners who are paying their own, we're responsible for paying the bill, the sewer bill directly, and are also responsible for paying the property tax bill where they're, okay, so this bill's going down, this bill's going up by a commensurate amount, and it's up to me to manage it. For the folks who have rental properties and all that, they need to be able to see that information as well. So we need to make sure that when we figure out how we're going to be communicating this out there, we need to take care of both of those scenarios. Thank you.
Councilman Medina.
Yes, thank you for a difficult situation to be in again, right? Where this is not an increase in taxes. This is basically a different way to make sure that the city collects all of the money that is due, right? And I understand that's makes it difficult to budget. I had a conversation with a landlord and a tenant at the same time, and the questions are valid. So I guess my question to staff is, in the notification to the residents, whether they're a landlord or they're just a property owner like some of us as well, that when the water bill goes out, could there be like just included like a reminder of like how much that sewer amount is? Because people get into habits, and if you're provided that reminder that it's $120 for sewer, like that's just a reminder of that to put that money aside. I know my dad, who's now 91, my sister helps him with the bills, right? But he likes to see like every month where each dollar's going. So I think that would be helpful, that as the water bill goes out, that perhaps the amount that the sewer amount is, that would be helpful for people to budget. And also what that would be helpful is for a tenant, right? So one of the comments was, you know, how am I going to let my tenant know how they should pay me? And it's like, well, the bill no longer is going to go to the tenant, it's going to go to the property owner. So in the water bill, if there was the water charges, and then below that would be, these are the associated sewer charges that would be for this month, then it would be easier for everyone to have that transparency to look at. The tenant could go, hey, landlord, well, this is the amount I'm going to pay, or how that gets negotiated. So it's a little difficult for the tenant who's asking me, like, so they're going to raise my rent by that amount, or how am I going to know what I'm paying? So I think it would be important that in the notifications that go out, that we provide them that reminder of that amount, and how difficult that would be. It seems like it's just a script that you would put in your billing to divide that yearly amount by 12. But that's kind of my first question and comment combined. And then the other question is, this is an ongoing thing. And I recall a number of years ago that it was in the range of $300,000 a year that water and sewer aren't collected each. And I just wanted to see if that number was familiar, because it sounded like that $700,000 is the accumulation of a year or two for sewer. So I just wanted to distinguish those amounts. Those are my questions.
So Councilmember Medina, to your first question, we don't know exactly. We've never done this type of we've never billed this way before in the past. Other agencies have, many agencies have. We are reaching out to them to find out how they've overcome some of these challenges. What I anticipate at the very minimum is that we would send a notice to all current customers and all property owners and say this parcel number will have a bill of X on the next parcel tax should the council approve this item this evening. The recurring notice can be both convenient and confusing because what is the amount that I need to pay? I'm not sure that our billing system was implemented in 2004, I believe, and so I'm not too certain how much we can customize that. But I think at the very minimum we could issue a one-time notice that would go to the customer as well as the property owner, so they're aware of their individual charge. To your second question about the delinquencies for water or for sewer and water. Specifically for sewer, $700,000 is the amount outstanding for all current and closed accounts over 30 days. If we look at 180 days, that number goes down to $300,000. So $400,000 is somewhere between the 30 days delinquent and the 180 days. Those are the ones that would be addressed most directly by this action. The 180 days, like I said, are mostly closed accounts, and it would be very difficult. It's highly unlikely that amount will change substantially over the next year.
Yeah, please.
Just one quick follow-up regarding the noticing, sending out the one-time notices. That makes to all the property owners makes perfect sense. I agree that taking that number, dividing it by 12, and having a reminder in the bill would probably be more confusing than helpful. But maybe having the whole amount every month, just as a reminder, this is what's going to hit you on the property tax, and have this just the same number showing up every other month on the water bill, just as a reminder. It wouldn't be, it's not added to anything. It's not an extra charge. It's just informational. As a reminder, this is what you're on your 24-25 property tax bill. This is going to be the extra assessment on it, so people can have that as a recurring thing. I understand we have challenges with our billing system, but if we can make that happen, I think that would be really helpful for folks.
Anything else, colleagues? Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
More of a statement. Just wanted to say that the comments I've heard. We've actually heard them for a long time, and this concept of doing this was actually discussed close to a decade ago, and there wasn't a real appetite to do it at the time for some of the same reasons, that it is a drastic change, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and I know it will be a difficult transition for a lot of people. I'm looking at my own in the report, and it's about another $1,000 on my property tax that I'll have to pay. But one of the things that I've heard consistently from the public is that every time we raise any kind of revenue, any rates or anything, they ask us, well, what are you doing to control the costs? And this particular step, and the reason why I brought it up several years ago, was that it does create a huge efficiency in how we collect this amount of money. I mean, the amount of money stays the same whether we cut it out or not, but if we're doing six charges, 6 bills that we have to process over the year versus a one-time cost of $1.74, 84, whatever it is that we pay the county to do it, does have a huge impact on how we process those bills. So it does take time. It takes a lot of staff effort to process those, and not to mention the losses that for the uncollected bills. So there is a benefit to the ratepayers to do this, and I know that it will be a challenge, especially in the first year. And, I agree with my colleagues that we should do whatever we can to make it as less painful as we can, but I do see the benefit in doing this. So just wanted to add those comments.
Go ahead, Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echoed Councilmember Salazar and Tom Hamilton and Marty Medina. I think it will benefit the city because the more we accurately collect the bills instead of having a deficit, maybe in the long run, we can prevent on raising the water bill or the sewer bill because we are getting a revenue back from our capital infrastructure. Although I know it will be harder for all of us as a taxpayer, but if the city can make the effort to remind us the property tax is collected or paid every 6 months, if we send the bill quarterly, then we can set aside that amount, and not that far ahead. Instead of maybe every month, I don't know how the bills are sent with the water bill, but there has to be a way to remind the homeowners so that they can reserve the money every 6 months.
Okay, I heard and I know the system is the system, and then you'll see how we can assist. I think we've all said the same thing. And I think, yes, change is not easy. I'm struggling with it more and more, I find. But also, there was a time here, too, that the council took steps to suspend water increases 2.5 years because of the economy, because of COVID, to try to have some understanding of that. And so there's never not been an increase in that since 2000. So I think we're trying to be mindful, but we're also trying to collect and find a better system that helps in the end when it comes to increases. With that, City Clerk, you've received the notices, and the account is still?
22.
We received 22 protests. Okay, with that, obviously, it doesn't meet the majority. Is there any action from council regarding the item before us, which is a resolution?
Through the chair, I don't think anyone wants to be the one to move forward with something that's not popular, but I will make the motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Motion and second, and Salazar Hamilton to adopt the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? It is unanimous. Okay. Let's move back to item A, please.
Item A, hold public hearing and consider adoption of a resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 to 25 rates for solid waste collection services with Recology San Bruno.
Okay, again, this is a public hearing, so we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing, which is, as was read by the city clerk. So let the record show that the notice of the hearing was given out as required by law, the city clerk has told me. Does staff have a report at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The objective this evening is for City Council to conduct a public hearing on a negotiated 7.65% rate increase that was approved with the City Council's adoption of the franchise agreement with Recology San Bruno on January 1, 2023. So conduct the public hearing and then adopt a resolution to set the rates effective July 1. By way of background, the city executed a 20-year franchise agreement with San Bruno Recology in 2023. The agreement includes 3 types of rate reviews negotiated. A negotiated rate review is stipulated in the agreement that was adopted in 2023, and those take effect for fiscal years 24, July 1, 2024, and I'm sorry, July 1, 2023, and July 1, 2024, fiscal years 24 and 25. In fiscal year 26, the contract stipulates that the parties will meet and discuss an interim rate review, which focuses on CPI, consumer price index increases that are impacted or that are realized by the garbage franchisee. And then there's a detailed rate. The next detailed rate is fiscal year 27, and in that one we go well beyond sort of the CPI. We go into the cost of equipment, fuel, labor, disposal fees, et cetera. So as I mentioned earlier, the action tonight is for the City Council to adopt the 7.65% negotiated rate increase that was agreed to upon adoption of the franchise agreement in 2023. By way of impact on customers, the staff report identifies that the 32-gallon toter for residential is sort of the typical size. The rate change would affect the bill by $2.89 per month. If we look at the adjusted rates compared to the other agencies in San Mateo County, you'll see that the adjusted rates place San Bruno right about the middle of the road. The historical rate increases, you'll see that the rate increases is lower than the past rate increase, and on average we're in we're about the middle threes, high fours over the period. The rate setting process on March 12th, the council adopted the resolution to initiate this process. April 26th, we placed the notice for the public hearing, and then tonight we're asking for your adoption of the resolution. The rates will take effect and billed by Recology San Bruno for the month beginning July 1. And again, we're seeking your approval of the resolution, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. At this time, do we have speaker cards?
I do not have any.
Is there any members of the audience that wish to speak on this topic? This is the opportunity.
Good evening, Council. I was just wondering, because of the rate increases on the toters, is that going to also include an increase on the larger bins? Say if you're doing demo in your homes, because right now it's rather expensive, and I'm just wondering if that's going to increase as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a representative from Recology San Bruno who can answer the question.
Yes, the 7.65% will go across the board, so it will include toters and debris boxes. I know.
Okay. All right, this is a final opportunity for owners of the property upon which the solid waste collection rates are imposed to submit a written protest and have it accounted in determining the existence of a majority. Seeing nobody coming forward, we'll go ahead and close public hearing. Can I have action, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second.
Mayor Medina, I'm sorry, we need the city clerk to read whether or not there were any majority protests, written protests submitted.
I see that coming down at the, on my,
Oh, this is to close the public?
Yes.
Okay,
that's all right.
Second.
Been motion and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. It's okay. You want to keep it going. Okay, so we can actually have any council comments or questions on the topic?
Sure. So, we never like raising rates. This was negotiated as part of our contract renewal, so this has been planned, and it's not arbitrary, and it's part of the agreement that we signed with Recology. And unfortunately, we live in a society where everything gets more expensive year over year, and this is one of those times. So that's where we are.
And I would say through the negotiations of the contract, which does include these, and then there is, I'll call it a very detailed report that's done so often to go ahead and examine what they say they deserve via the contract, and then it's a trust but verify. It's also in this new agreement, whether it's bulky pickup, whether it's a guarantee of the April and the October community drop-off days, those are things that were established also in this new agreement, and so we had other opportunities in which to provide service to the community. Okay. Anything else, colleagues? Councilmember Medina.
Yeah, I want to add some important things about the typical garbage collection service. They're longer-term contracts, and in these contracts, and this would be probably beneficial if our ecology representative could give additional information on, is that it's very standard that there are ways in the contract that they're allowed to come back year after year to cover their additional expenses, just like everyone else. Now, I don't like paying more for anything either, just like the majority of people, but this is an ongoing increase of costs for just about everything else, whether it's labor, whether it's gas, whether it's the increased cost for dropping the garbage at the landfill, and the other composting and all the other unnecessary things that garbage collection does. So I want to make sure people understand this is very, very common. And I was hoping that maybe Kirsten could provide a little bit of just confirmation of that and just how common it really is. It's of how these contracts work out, that you're allowed to ask for these increases.
When we negotiate, yeah.
Right. And then we have a contract now.
Yeah.
And in that contract.
We have to have a contract, yeah.
And it goes on past 27. It goes on until our.
All the agencies that are in the service, yeah, they all have every jurisdiction, yes.
So,
whether it's Allied, whether it's Scavenger, whether it's Recology, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I need to turn to the city clerk to see the count for protests, please.
The city received 19 written protests against the solid waste collection rates. The number of written protests do not represent 1/2 or more of the property upon which solid waste collection rates are proposed to be imposed.
Okay, thank you very much. So it was 19 written, does not meet the criteria. There was no additional this evening while we were here. So it's back to the council for any final comments and or action.
Let's
boycott, make these two do it.
I was just going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the 7% does seem a bit steep if you compare that to just inflation in general, but what we negotiated was substantially less than what would have been charged normally. I think we were looking at a 30% increase, 29% before we negotiated this. So we are saving ratepayers a little bit of money by going this route. And I think everyone else has already said it. You know, everything goes up. The state keeps imposing new regulations that we have to meet, and they're not free and they're not cheap, and it's getting harder and harder to find places to put our garbage, and so those prices are going to continue to go up. So definitely not something I enjoy doing, but it is a necessity of keeping this service going for our residents. So unless there's any other comments, I will make a motion to bring forward the resolution for approval.
I'll second.
Motion Salazar, second Marty Medina, to approve the resolution. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the last item under public hearing, item C, please.
Item C, hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution amending the city's user fee schedule effective July 1st, 2024, and direct staff to compile and publish a comprehensive master fee schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. June is most definitely a very busy finance month, so thank you for bearing with me this evening. My final report of the night. Tonight we are recommending that the City Council consider adoption of amendments to the July 1, 2024 user fee schedule. After conducting the public hearing, adopt a resolution and then direct staff to prepare the master fee schedule. By way of background, the current July 1, 2024 master fee schedule or user fee schedule was adopted by City Council on April 23rd. It incorporated the fourth year of rate increases from the rate study conducted in 2021. The April 23rd action also indexed fees for inflation and identified new fees, updated fees, and adopted or modified new fees or existing fees. However, at that time, we did not recommend action on the appendices. The appendices are a combination of a couple of different things, which is why we did not ask council to take action at the last meet on April 23rd. The first is that the appendices include utility or user rates, city net rates, which are set administratively. We have the water and wastewater rates, which are set by the 5-year rate structures the council adopted in 2023. And then there are stormwater and business tax rates, which can't change without voter approval. There is no need for City Council to take action on these items. Action has already been taken, or there's a limitation on that. However, the appendices do include several items that adjust annually. For example, the gambling tax, parking penalty fines, and forfeitures may be reviewed or updated annually. And then we also have our capacity charges for our 2 enterprises, for our water and wastewater enterprise. And then service charges, which are not the same as rates. Rates have already been taken care of, fines and penalties. So the staff report recommends adopting those changes that have annual reviews as listed in the report. We are also recommending 2 new fees, or some new fees. The first is to institute a payment transaction surcharge of 2%. This would allow the city to recover the cost for processing certain transactions, primarily by credit card. The surcharge would be applicable to the Recreation and Aquatic Center and the community development to the extent that those surcharges can be programmed into the system. They are not applicable to our water, wastewater, or city net payments that are received. Those charges are already included in the rate structure that council has approved, or administratively approved by the city manager in the case of CityNet. Therefore, there will not be a new charge to water and wastewater customers or CityNet customers. Additionally, the Community Services Department has identified several additional fees that were not included in April 23rd, and you'll see those listed in the attachment to the staff report. Again, just to wrap up, we're seeking council approval or adoption of a resolution amending the user fee study, and then with that, we will compile the master fee schedule, which includes all of the other items that council is not required to take action on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there any speaker cards?
I have no speaker cards.
Okay. All right. With no speaker cards and nobody in the audience stepping forward to the podium, can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Hamilton, second Salazar to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Bring it back to council if there's any comments, questions, or action. Councilmember Hamilton.
Oh, my light was still on. I don't have any comments. This is all very, very straightforward. If there's no comments or questions, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion Hamilton, second Salazar, to approve the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to item 9. I did have one, but I will submit it with the city clerks to save us some time. Moving to item 10, comments from council members. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say it has been more than 3 months that I've been noticing that we have the same group, members of the public who are speaking freely and perhaps assuming that the city is not doing something. And I think it's time to educate the public, the residents, of what we do. Between the staff and the council members, I believe that we do know, the process, what agency can do and what not. And between each jurisdiction, we are limited on what we can offer and what we can do. We can support, but there's probably a way that we can educate the public. I've seen our website, newsletters, city manager newsletters, public parking meter update. I was wondering if there is any event that happens, recent event that happens in the city, even though it's not our jurisdiction, to basically put it out in the website, any updates, just so the public are informed.
Okay, and I have some updates and graduations and stuff. I'll submit that to city clerk for the minute time. The one thing I will say is, I won't say finally, I'll say the weeds have been removed around the BART and general cleanup around the station and also Bayshore Circle, which those were rather overgrown, but that has been taken care of. And also there's an area underneath the overpass on BART's property that also got cleaned up today, so I have to thank Molly and obviously Bart for doing that. But I will submit the rest of the city clerk so staff can get home. With that, we'll go ahead and
We still have us over in this side. Comments.
I
thought you said
Oh.
committee report out. Sorry.
then maybe I will say it, but I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
sorry.
I was asking ahead of time, do we have anything here or here? And so I didn't hear.
I misunderstood your question, so I apologize.
Marty first, or Tom first. You two
I
decide.
have a quick one. So just because you reminded me when you mentioned the weeds getting taken care of around the BART station, so that's great. I also wanted to acknowledge that there was a large amount of weeding done up and down Sneath and up and down San Bruno Avenue, and it's made a huge difference. So I just wanted to acknowledge that took place, and it was very welcome. Thank you.
Fantastic. I have two things. The short one is just want to let everybody know that on Sunday, June 2nd, hundreds of children and residents paraded through our downtown. And I want to make sure to thank everyone for making the Posey Parade a great community event. San Bruno staff, the San Bruno Lions, our community, and the sponsors. My second thing is a little bit longer, but here we go. So paid parking is entering its third month of operation. As with any big change, there has been frustration in our community over this council decision. Staff has been working through various issues, and last week we were advised of the following improvements, where the kiosk operability is up to 97%, parking can now be paid in advance, and there is now a 20-minute interval for on-street parking. These improvements are definitely appreciated. However, based on the discussions with numerous business owners and shoppers, the number one request I have heard is the option to use shorter time intervals in the parking lots. I understand staff has been reviewing these shorter time options, and I'm expressing my support to reduce the charge time interval in these parking lots. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Something just popped into my head, and I was going to ask if, I've noticed that there's some significant work being done at the intersection of Huntington and Sneath related to the intersection that the South Line project is doing, and you know, there are lane closures now, and it looks like significant work happening. And so I was just going to ask if we could get, doesn't have to be at a meeting, but if we could just get either a memo or something posted on their schedule and just what we can expect over the next several weeks.
Absolutely, we can do that. You bet.
Thank you. And council, just so you know, I'm going to submit this stuff because there's a list. But with that, to get everybody home, the next regular city council meeting will be held on June 25th, 2024 at 7 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned.